Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Slow but surely.
Yeah.
There's still quite a bit of wetness.
June 20th
Yeah.
at 5.
Just older.
You're not going to be at this one?
I'll be at this one this
Oh,
week,
okay.
but next month I'll be at
Just the fact that they're allowed to organize and be
I'll be, you haven't had these yet?
and
Huh?
to continue to manage
No.
the agenda the way that they really want to.
So Myron always has a conflict. Do you want to just add it as a consent agenda item next month? I'm always willing to take on your.
Ooh, speaking of which,
What do you need me to
Myron's
cover?
busy at Acute Hospital.
So put me on it. Okay.
Well, just this time.
Yeah, just give those notes to April.
Yep.
Well, it's not necessarily an ongoing thing. I didn't talk about that, but I just meant
I'll try.
Thursday. But no fire exciting. That's what I'm doing.
Welcome to Commissioner work. All the time.
No, not all the time.
We're, let's see.
No, it's just
You
that
were
I had
gone for
scheduled
the dance
something.
recital, right?
And I can't change it.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay, I just wanted to check before I give April changes.
I came in late Saturday, dance recital, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, there was just a dance recital.
So you'll be back for the
CCA.
July one.
YMCA does
just
an
a
annual
July.
thing. I didn't go before, but my family raved about it so much that this year I made a point of it. And
Rena tell you not to touch.
Sadie Siegfried, wasn't it? She's midwife and
Oh, no, she really did say don't touch them.
She learned that.
Sorry,
When
you're out
I
of
was
luck.
in here, we just got
We
done
pick
setting
up
them
all the
up.
things.
and I
Yes, we
was
did.
Immediately.
I'm charged.
And I
Anyways,
don't think
we
I
were
messed
talking
anything
about
up too badly.
being on stage in front of all those people, and she's like, "I love it. I want to be up there all by myself at the spotlight." And Beth is just like
Friday meeting for July, but
mind blown. She's opposite, and she's like, "There's a little bit of Leo. Didn't we discover that in you?" My wife's really into zodiac, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's what's going on." Just right now made me think of that.
All right.
So often I don't use this, so now it has to run all the updates right now. I haven't used it since the last meeting.
So we can touch this all we want, and
Nothing will happen.
yeah, I can just pretend like I'm doing something.
I thought maybe you'd have it figured out by now, Dave.
Y'all hack into the system.
only took me 3 times to learn
What's that?
to stop sticking it there. Maybe I was just being passive aggressive.
I got like the worst handwriting of anybody you know.
Jordy's is worse than yours.
It's hard to believe.
The bank has to call me and ask me what the hell he means.
So what's the deal with this?
You can't touch it. You can't do anything with it. She's controlling it from over there. You just watch it.
First people that can't see the screen.
Morning, Molly.
Hi, Molly.
Okay, they're ready to go. Good morning. I will call the regular meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners to order, where our mission is supporting community through quality public service. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any adjustments to the agenda? If There being none, a motion to approve the agenda.
So, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I will bring to your attention, we have a new way of following our agenda. It's over there on the big screen, and April, our assistant, will control it. So we have nothing to do up here, we have small monitors here, and so we can keep track too, unless we have our own paper to keep track of. So this is cool. I think it'll be great for people to be able to follow along out there. At this time, I will open a public comment period. So I will recognize anyone who wants to come forward. This public comment period is a time for the public to welcome and address the county board on any matter of the county concern. When invited to speak, please state your name, write your name and your address on the paper provided, and the topic that you are addressing. And then members of the public may speak respectfully up to 5 minutes, and the public comment period is limited to about 30 minutes. The county board members may ask or answer questions of the speaker, but the issues will not be debated during the public comment period. And at our board's discretion, the board may agree to schedule matters addressed during the public comment period on the current board agenda or on a future agenda. And I will add that sometimes at the end of our meeting, we will bring up some comments that we can address at that time. Otherwise, you know, each one of us are available, both by phone call and email, to further a discussion if you so desire to do that. So we ask that the discussions be civil in nature and be directed at the board and not other members of the public. So I'll recognize whoever wants to be first. Donna will come forth.
Good morning.
Morning, Arvis.
Morning, Argus.
In your board packet, on page 11, there is a reference to the Y and the bathroom project and presence of asbestos in the tile, so now we need to do an abatement. I'm wondering, when was that bathroom built that it has asbestos tile in it? I hope this is not part of the new construction. I didn't believe that asbestos was part of the building materials that were currently...
It's part of the old building, Arvis.
Part of the old building? Okay, thank you. On page 141, you talk about the roof of the courthouse, and that that's going to be repaired in the amount of $105,000. Is that part of the building maintenance and repair, the $100,000 that you have budgeted? No, this is over and above? Okay. And then I'm wondering, are we in a position to hold the contractor responsible, or how are we going to hold the contractor responsible if things go wrong with the roof? We seem to have a number of projects where there are glitches and things that need to be taken care of after the fact. And I realize there's a lot of warranties written into each and every part of that contract, for paint, for metal, for whatever you want to name. But are we prepared to hold them responsible if something doesn't go right? There is, on pages 96 and 97, some expense reviews. And I was wondering, there's another Y expense, which is called a roofing project for $120,000. I was wondering, is that the roofing project or is that the bathroom project? Or is this another project that, I apologize if I missed the discussion about that happening, but another $120,000 to the Y on top of the $30,000 over and above because they didn't catch something when they originally made the bid. When is this gonna end? What is our obligation to the Y? I thought we had $110,000 that was budgeted every year. That seems to be just the beginning of a never-ending battle with the Y. When are we going to say stop? You become responsible for these expenses. They're yours, they're not ours. I understand we own the building, but at some point, don't they have to be responsible? On the end of the agenda, you talked about the salaries of the commissioners and looking at reviewing those, comparing us to the metro communities, 22 counties who are like us. And I'm wondering, how are they like us? How can you compare a community that has, or a county that has 5,000 people and 9% of the land is available? We are not a metro county. You can pick and choose who you want to compare with to get the results that you wish to have. Could we maybe look at a different way of doing this? We are not metro. We never will be metro, we hope. We like our small community. We like, if you want to consider it backwards, Northwoods. That's what we hang our hat on. And yet we go to the sources like the metropolitan counties when it's convenient to get the answers that we want.
Thank you, Arvis. Donna, would you like to be next?
Good morning. It's a
Morning.
beautiful day for
Good morning.
My name is Donna Lumpy. And I would like to talk about taping, the topic of taping meetings. Before you today is a huge document regarding policy, including taping meetings. How many times has this taping policy been brought up in the years you've been on the board? 2016, 2017, 2018, and here we are again in 2019. It seems to be a waste of time and resources, especially every time when it was brought to a vote, it was passed unanimously to tape. When you're making decisions, not only in hundreds of thousands of dollars, but millions, to have the ability to go to the tape and revisit a project is huge. I think Rhonda Silence's blog, Unorganized Territory, says it all and says it really well about making the argument for taping any and all meetings. I have a copy of it for you, and I hope you read it. Your constituents deserve the backstory as to why you decided to vote for or against an issue. Most decisions seem to be made behind the scenes and a perfunctory vote is taken at the board meeting. We'll never know how or why you reached your decision or where a commissioner stands on projects if we don't have some tape. I also have a recent email that I sent to correct inaccurate information in a press release. This isn't the first time this happened, and let's correct it. And I think until you're able to ensure 100% accuracy in your press releases and your minutes, you have a duty to continue to tape. Otherwise, how would we ever know? Another very good reason to tape is to provide continuity of projects. The strategic plan is a great example. In 2017, meetings were held involving over 40 employees, and this was all summarized in press releases. In June of 2017, it said it would be discussed at the next committee of the whole meeting. That never happened. It went dark. So I recently asked a committee member about it, and she said it was stalled for 2 years. Another reason to tape, and to use that tape to keep tabs on projects and what's going on under your watch. This isn't the first or the only project that started with great gusto and then faded to black with no explanation. How many of you review meetings after they're concluded on tape? Maybe for something you've missed, or if a constituent has a question. Today's meeting is a case in point. I don't know that I've ever seen a board packet as thick as it is today. How can you possibly absorb all that? I mean, it's just beyond me what you have to try to get through in a meeting. To have a tape to have something you can go back and say, gee, I missed that, or I'd like to clarify. I don't quite remember everything that went on in this huge packet. I think it would be one of the most useful tools you have. And I would also think you want to have control over your own data. If you decide to quit taping and somebody else picks it up, could it be altered, edited, something deleted? I don't know. I'm just asking. I would think you'd want to have control over it. And you've mentioned, I think Commissioner Newkirk, when you've gone to the committees of the counties, Minnesota counties meetings, how people have mentioned to you how innovative Cook County is. And you know, that people look to Cook County for projects we're working on. And as a board, you've created committees, you've spent entire meetings discussing transparency and how to get information to the public. I hope you continue to be a trailblazer and provide transparency to people that voted you into the chair you're sitting at. And thanks so much. You don't want to
Thank you.
day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
I do have copies of this for you.
Thank you.
I'll just leave them here.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning, Nick.
You can all relax. I'm not going to complain or criticize today. I just have a couple of suggestions. Later this morning, you'll be asked to accept the resignation of the EMS PIO director. My comments today are not by no means intended to reflect on Valerie's performance in this position. In fact, I sincerely thank her for her service to the county and to the community, and wish you luck in your new job. But this vacancy does offer some opportunities for the commissioners in the county. Number one, perhaps there's a more efficient and cost-effective way to deliver the state-mandated emergency services. Maybe we can do what we do with the highways department and share it with another county. In fact, in researching the statutes, Statute 1225, Subdivision 5 states that with the approval of the state, 2 or more political subdivisions may enter into agreements determining the boundaries of their respective emergency management responsibilities or provide for a common emergency management organization. It's just an idea. I think we could take a look at it. I wish we'd do a serious exploration of that option. The joint agreement with Lake County for the highway department is great. I think Kristen Foster has done an excellent job. She's been the best person in that position that I can recall since I built my house 25 years ago. The second opportunity lies in the possible elimination of the public information officer position. County information used to be obtained directly from the commissioners, department heads, and staff. During the last few years, it seems that a firewall has been established in order to restrict access to those individuals who used to get instruction from or information from. The commissioner's job does not come with a cloak of anonymity. You have to answer questions and you have to be accountable. I mean, that's what's expected of you. In addition, you have some extremely talented people running our departments who are very knowledgeable and able to give the answers that we want without having to go through some sort of procedure. County commissioners could use this opportunity to show that they are engaged, knowledgeable, and working to address county needs and opportunities. Information that is filtered through an administrative bureaucracy is neither timely nor complete and risks being fraught with errors. The public deserves better, the county deserves better. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning, and I hope you continue to give us this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Anyone else?
Is that? Okay. Nobody made him say his name, so I didn't know.
Good morning, my name is Mike Larson.
Morning, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Ms. Fick and Mr. Cavell, thank you. I'm here as a private citizen this morning, and I'm here to ask I'm here to ask each of you for your active involvement and engagement in the matter regarding the possible building of a FLDS compound on Pike Lake Road. Few points cannot be clarified enough. First, speak for myself, of course, and for those who are willing to speak up, but I know I speak for many who are choosing to be silent for a number of reasons, perhaps related to fear of retribution of one form or another. Second, while we may struggle with the tenets of the FLDS, most of us are entirely capable of separating criminal intolerance from religious intolerance. My comments are entirely focused on criminal behavior and not on a religion. I'm certain from dozens of conversations that I've had with several of you and with concerned Cook County citizens that they feel exactly the same way. As you know, the FLDS leaderships, they're masters. They're masters in taking advantage of two narratives when they expand into counties like ours. Number one, that they are being discriminated against for the religious reasons. The first narrative. The second is that we are too busy paying attention to our own lives and the needs to stand up as they move in. Please do not buy into these narratives. Fiercely protect the freedom of religion in every part of this county, but do not buy into the notion that your citizens in this county are concerned about fundamental Mormonism, or frankly polygamy for that matter. That's not the problem. Citizens in this county, those who are willing to speak up and those who are too afraid to, are focused on criminal acts. Those that are a matter of public record and disturb the consciousness of all reasonable people. And please do not fall into the live and let live trap. Speak up, be proactive, and act wherever reasonably appropriate when possible. We have asked for your help and your voices on this matter. We have asked you to let us know what you need from us, from citizens. We want to hear from you. This Friday, this weekend, Tanya Tewell from Holding Out Help and Sam Brower, a well-known private investigator who is a Mormon, are coming to Grand Marais. On Friday night, they'll be showing Prophets Pray. Sam and Tanya will join the community for this showing. The following morning, we will hold a public forum with Sam and Tanya to answer questions people have in the community about FLDS and Seth Jeffs. We took up donations to pay for their travel and lodging from Salt Lake City, but they are not being paid anything to join us. They have agreed to come to Cook County to help us because they know what this can do. They've done this with little notice. They'll be missing 3 to 4 days of their personal lives and their families to leave and join us. We want you, as community leaders, to be there. We would like to hear your point of view. We'd like your advice. And we'd like your guidance. If you are supportive and understand our concerns, great. If you think we are misguided and the community would benefit from another approach, great. If you are concerned but not sure of the best approach, please join us. We're all here to learn. But please express your point of view. A lot depends on it. And if we do this well, with respect, with professionalism, compassion, and resolve, we're going to come out a better community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good morning.
Hi, Ben.
Ben Peters. So I wanted to come today before you guys to let you know, I think that, again, you have an opportunity. with regard to the rehiring and retirement of a sheriff's deputy. The contract and resulting contributions from the city of Grand Marais, it's my understanding that that contract originated in 1997 and has relatively remained unchanged. The current financial contribution for them, about $140,000, justifies the expense of about one deputy with squad car pensions, et cetera. And I think that rehire should be suspended, or at least tabled, until the city reprioritizes its commitment to public safety. I don't think they appear to have a resource problem with over $1 million in proposed amenities for the Highway 61 project. Their commitment to redevelop and maintain Sawtooth Bluffs Recreation Area, $4 million public works garage, aligned with $150,000 in solar panels, all while aggressively pursuing a costly climate action plan. I think that supporting the cost of public safety really doesn't appear to be a priority for them, and I think you can affect a little bit of that change. So I would encourage you to maybe go back to the drawing board with the city and figure out what level of commitment they're going to have before you determine your level of commitment to providing that service. Quick note on taping the meetings. I just took a quick look today, and it looks like on average people view the YouTube meetings about 175 views, which I think is more than we have in the room today and most other days. And I think a significant portion of the county taxpayers that reside out of the county, and they're called to still pay their property taxes and contribute financially, and they don't have the capacity to sit here today and ask questions and get information as far as, or give input as far as how the county spends those dollars. If transparency is in fact desirable, as you've all stated it is, as well as having an informed and engaged constituent base, I think you should continue to tape all the meetings. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Good morning. My
Morning.
name is Lloyd Beck. I live in Grand Marais. And
Would you please sign in?
what's that?
Please sign in, thank you.
And I'd like to address the upcoming 2020 budget in the YMCA. As you begin planning the budget, it's hard to imagine taxpayers will experience any relief from the unchecked spending. Ever since Mr. Cadwell took over as county administrator, we've been near or at the top of the list of counties with the highest levies. I say unchecked because in a number of cases, the majority of you don't even know the figures before you vote, which we know what happened in 2018. Pretty hard to perceive a person would buy something without knowing its price. It's real obvious to the majority of us folks in this county that under Cadwell's direction, you county commissioners have put us in a position where we are bleeding dollars. Don't believe me? Talk to the folks on the street who are at their wits' ends due to the high increases in property taxes and who feel helpless to be able to do anything about it, and lots of them have moved out of here account of it. Why? Because those they've elected to represent them have chosen not to listen to anybody but Cadwell. Time and time again, when they've tried, it just falls on deaf ears. Why? Because Cadwell told you flat out in 2017, spending is not out of control and the levy is not out of control. And don't let the people outside this room tell you any different. In 2016, Mr. Cadwell told us there shouldn't be any unexpected double-digit increases. The regular budget can be supported with a planned levy increase of approximately 4.3% annually going forward. We know none of that has happened. When that didn't work, we were all supposed to forget his words and subject to levies in double digits and often the highest in the state. And just a couple of weeks ago, Cadwell said because it costs so much to live in Cook County, future levies will need to be higher than other counties. The reality is, in the last 4 years, we've experienced a combined levy increase that exceeds 40%. Actually, it was 48% with the amendment of the budget in 2018 with that $378,225, which was not put into the budget at the beginning of 2018. County leadership needs to get a handle on the spending. I've got all the actual numbers, real numbers, given to me by our county auditor treasurer, Mr. Brady Fowler. If anyone's interested, call me at 387-1727. And I truly believe the only way we're really going to try to keep our levies down now, because of the high increases, it sets us back almost 6.5–7% every year when we start a budget, because of the high increases, is if people talk to Brady and we get a hiring freeze and try to eliminate costs wherever we can, wherever it's necessary.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Is that it? Well, didn't get a chance to talk about the water.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Just a reminder, I'll give you 5 minutes after you sign in.
Hello, I'm Brad Thompson. I apologize for not having the time to, and I didn't do a lot of research on the YMCA project. I did not hear this from my mother. This kind of story goes out, and your mommy said, that's not how it went. YMCA project, I've heard there's roof problems. Why can't we go after the original contractors, engineers, whoever signed off on the project? Anybody else will be sued. I've lost my backside on projects that I've done a bid on and messed up. I've had to go back in and do stuff for free. I didn't have to, but I'm an honest person, and I've like my customers to return. That's kind of goes into the bathroom remodel project. The contractor, if he missed something, screwed up on the bid, I guess that's his own problem. He had an in. He's got some family working in the Y, if I have this all in my facts right. So he should have been able to give an accurate bid if anybody could have. I don't know, we just need to go after these original contractors and original engineers and people. Get this extra spending was crazy, and I hope I'm not talking over off the wall, because I did not do my research, so apologize for that. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
So we've used up our half hour, but if anyone else has any comments or questions or whatever, I'll give you 2 minutes on the clock.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gordon Salisbury.
Morning.
Morning.
The only point I really want to make today is about the taping of these meetings, the recording of these meetings. Last week I sat in on the Planning Commission's meeting, and the item of full business, vacation rentals, several people had come to make comments, but the comment period had been closed in the previous meeting, and that was not part of the agenda. That was unknown. And I think it's important that this recording continues to take place so that people remember and have complete and total context. Today's document has the comments from the meeting before, and the public comments are represented and are out of context, and that's missed. And how can we get them back into context? We get them back into context by looking at what in fact was said. The written document is written by humans, and things are missed. Back to this, a good example of this planning meeting last week. All of you were there except Commissioner Duchamp. And it's not important why the commissioner was not there. What's important is how would he be able to catch up? And that is by reviewing the recording, in my view, not the written item, because the written item misses stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon.
Okay, public comment period is over. Moving on to the consent agenda. There are 2 items I'd like to pull. I'd like to pull C and M. Anyone else like to pull anything?
Same ones I got.
Okay, so we'll approve everything else.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm pulling C because I think publicly, I would like to always thank people who give a donation. In the past, we've had donations to our veterans. Today, we have a donation from a person outside of the county donating to our K-9 dog. I think that's pretty spectacular, that they will do that in our county. And so I want to thank that person. And this is hard.
Marcia Ling is a longtime resident of Cook County also.
Was she?
Yep.
To accept the resignation of our EMT and Communication Director, Public Service, Public Information. Valerie, you have done a stellar job. I think we need to think long and deep, as Nick said, to look at the job description, and maybe you can help us on that for the emergency management. I've been part of that whole program going up to Grand Portage when we had an in-depth 5-day training on emergency management, and then all of the work that Valerie has done since she came aboard and worked with us at the county. So we are going to look at this in depth, and I would assume that the Personnel Committee would be looking at that, and maybe Valerie would help you with that.
It is set to be reviewed, as we often do when we get something like this. There was a question during public comment about sharing services, and in the 6+ years I've been here, we've had this conversation many times about shared services with EMS, and I will tell you that our closest shared partner would be Lake County, and their EMS director is stretched as much as ours had been, and the conversations that we actually had was about hiring a full-time EMS to share, so we would have their EMS, our EMS, plus an additional. So obviously we can take a look again and see what's going on. We both have very large districts to cover, and what you did and what you covered when you came in has been nothing but amazing. So thank you for your service.
And also, you know, the communication. Valerie has laid kind of a base work for us, so I appreciate that, and we can continue working on all sorts of communication. That's in our packet later on to begin discussing that. And anything that Valerie could give us a tip on to continue and how to do that, we'd appreciate it. But I just wanted to say publicly thank you, and the best of luck in your new adventure. You will be staying in Cook County, so that part's even better. So we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Okay, so we have a presentation with the,
Can I offer some clarification on the suggestion of a shared emergency manager?
Yeah.
The rules have actually changed with Homeland Security, and they do not allow a shared emergency management director for the sole reason that one county would get preferential response during an incident, and most disasters don't stop at a county line. And because you have a responsibility for life safety and property infrastructure, they've changed those regulations. It may have been 2016, potentially 2017, but Homeland Security Emergency Management Minnesota does not allow for emergency management only a shared director between 2 counties. We have a mutual aid agreement, which is allowable, that backfills when one emergency management director or the other goes on vacation, so there's coverage. But for a permanent solution, they no longer allow that shared service because one county would get preferential treatment, and you can't run incident command in both jurisdictions at the same time.
and it also goes over our national border too, with Ontario, and Valerie worked very hard on mutual aid with that, so that's, all those pluses is our reward for working with you, so, and you working with us. Okay, so, soil and water?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We still need action on item C and M.
Oh,
I'd like
yes.
to make a motion to approve the K-9 donation as well as regretfully the resignation of our EMS PIO director.
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that, Jeff. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Elena Hansel, and I am the district manager with the Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District. We like to try to provide you with updates, but I realize it's been since 2014 since we've been here updating you. So with new faces, a little bit of a shift in our office, it seems like a good time to give you an opportunity to know what we've been doing for the last few years and what we're kind of looking forward to for the future. Quick background, I'll give you a little bit of history. We'll go just into the projects and funding for what we do. Recently, we did our strategic planning for our district, and our mission kind of shifted, but it's to maintain soil and water quality in Cook County by fostering responsible land use and by controlling soil erosion and non-point pollution. The boards will encourage local conservation efforts by providing educational, technical, and financial assistance for local landowners, users. We had a vision with it because that's a pretty long mission. It's just we're here to conserve and protect the soil and water resources of Cook County. In our office, we have 5 elected supervisors. Their districts are a little different than county commissioner supervisors, but our supervisors are Don Goodell. He's District 1, so that starts, we're starting on the west end. District 2 is Stan Tull. District 3 is Joan Farnham. She's in the city area. District 5 is David Berglund, so that would be up from the city area. And then District 6 is Jerry Henniker, and that's on the east side of the county. We have currently 4 staff, 3 full-time and 1 part-time. Teresa Oberg, she's our district administrator. We have Phil Larson, our conservation technician, and Kayla Kligman, who's also a conservation technician. We also, this summer, we will be getting 1 intern through the CCMI. We also have a seasonal technician that's with a cooperative agreement with the county and several other partners for invasive species technician. And then we also have in our tiny little office, we get 2 11-year-old to 14-year-olds that we get once a week that come out and do projects. So we are a busy little office in our corner of the courthouse, which we're grateful for. And then, yeah, we are part of we have Minnesota State Statutes, Chapter 103C. And that's what we fall under as a district. All the districts do. We were first formed, a little bit of history, in 1938 when SWCDs first came about in response to the Dust Bowl. I like to sometimes tease that word disaster response because it seems like when there's an issue, then we get called. Often people aren't like, oh, things are going great, can we plant more trees? They're like, oh man, all the trees fall down, can you help us? My house is, things are falling into the river. So SWCDs are formed from the Dust Bowl. There's 91 SWCDs in Minnesota. I'm not going to read below what we're tasked with, and you can read that on your time. But we're here to help the landowners to put conservation on the ground. So how are we funded? The most important question it seems like people are worried about. We get a little bit of funding from the county, which we're very grateful for, so thank you. Our agreement also helps with us being able to operate day to day, so we're really appreciative of that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to work so closely with the county. We get a little bit of funding from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. I'm going to refer to them as BOWSR, so I don't have to just let you know what the acronym is for. And then the rest of it is what we call restricted funds. We are funded through grants, so it means we are writing our jobs and making sure that we have a job year after year, month after month, just to keep our work on the ground and projects in the ground. So this is what our operating budget looks like. You can see the FY18 is the actual amounts that are shown. FY19 is budgeted. We go each year to legislators and advocate for SWCDs to continue our funding. If you've been watching legislation right now, we're up on the chopping block all over the place. We're either not going to get funding or we're going to get funding, which will impact our staffing and impact our workloads, but we're going to stay hopeful that this gets worked out. And it's not just our SWCD, it will impact all 91 of them. So you can see our operating budget, it kind of fluctuates up to around 500,000 to 400, and These are our revenues, our funds. It changes from year to year depending on what the projects are and what the grants are. So you see that large one, if everybody's like, ooh, they had $1 million. We did. We had $1 million grant, which I'll talk about. It was over 3 years. And if you've ever worked on projects in conservation on the ground, it takes a year to get them going. It takes another year to get all the permits and contractors. And then we actually get to do the project, so you can kind of see when those projects hit the ground. That's just the way it works. Our operating budget is around $270,000 a year to keep our staff employed. The rest of the money all goes towards projects. So 17% is from the local funds. 44% is from our state funds. That's through Bowser. That's one of those that's partially on the chopping block. And then we get the rest is from competitive grants. So this is what one funding year looks like for our office. This is how we keep our doors open. There's about 20 some, I don't have to count, 20 plus different grants that we report on each year. And they vary depending on what's going on. Right now we have 3 applications pending that will hopefully help for next year to meet those grants. We have a lot of funding sources we work with. We have to find match for a lot of these grants, so we'll match federal grants to state grants, the county grants to other grants. It's a crazy little web that we have to weave to keep it open, but we make it work. This is what we have to record our time. Everyone's like, oh, so what, you get grants. Well, this is also what we have to do. Beyond doing reporting, every day we have to record what we did all day long. So we account for all our minutes. It's quite tedious, but again, it's just, we're grateful to have work, we're grateful for what we do, so we make it work. Luckily, this is put together a good spreadsheet. So. All right, so beyond the financial stuff, what are our standard operations? We do site visits by request, so we have a lot of landowners that will call, stop in, ask for us to come out. We provide that service for free to go see what's going on the land and how we can help. We're responsible for the buffer law, doing a lot of the tracking, reporting, if landowners call, if land services need us, we go out and do that. We get about $3,000 to run that program. We are part of the Wetland Conservation Act. We have one of our conservation technicians sits on that panel. He goes out, has to do site restoration plans, for expertise. I am the county's water planner, so I help, and I'll talk about what the water plan is in a minute, but I help track, make sure we're on track with that, both the county and the SWCDs. Cook County has 2 water plans. We have the Cook County Comprehensive Water Plan, and we have the One Watershed, One Plan. We review variances and requests and zoning requests, so those variances that happen with land services, oftentimes people will say, okay, I have to come to your office now, and you come out to my office, or come out to my land and tell me what to do. So we'll go out and do that. And then we implement these conservation practices with landowners. And I'm not done. We do even more. We work with volunteers in surface water monitoring. And I'll touch on that in a minute. We provide education outreach opportunities. We do all our grant administration reporting. We also coordinate the state climatology, snow, and raining reporting. So we have volunteers all over the county that do this. We do the annual tree sale, and then we seek funding to keep our doors going. So we have a lot going on. So the water management planning, just a brief update in case you're not familiar with that. Cook County has 2 water plans. The one is the Cook County Comprehensive Water Plan that was adopted in October of 2014. States or counties are not required to have a water plan, but if you do adopt it, it's really good because you get funding associated with it. So this plan, from the One Watershed, One Plan getting adopted, this plan now just covers the Rainy River headwaters, so Laurentian Divide and North. With these water plans, the county is able to get money for SSTS, Wetland Conservation Act, both the water plans, and then the shoreline, for money for shoreline. So if you remember back when there was a little bit of issues with the ordinance, the state was like, wait, you have to fix that and make sure everything's in compliance, and the SSTS goes through. So the water plan helps to have this funding secured. The One Watershed, One Plan also is part of this, and so the county adopted that in May of 2017. It's also a 10-year plan. It is a collaborative effort with Lake County, Lake SWCD, and Cook County and Cook SWCD. So the 4 LGUs, it was a pretty extensive process. We were a pilot area, which means we are the guinea pigs for like 10 years now. But it's been a good process and really good help and support from the county. We're looking forward to more work with that. It's allowed our area for Lake Superior North to get $387,059. So what did that funding go towards? Grand Marais adopted a stormwater plan, and that money went to help with putting in some stormwater treatment as Highway 61 gets remodeled. It helps to develop a coastal erosion map, and so that's a 5-year roughly process. It's a larger project, it was seed money, and that will help the planning and zoning folks, hopefully the planning commission, to say you need to set your house back farther, basically, because it's going to erode, especially with higher lake levels, increased storm events, and increased frequent rain events. So it's going to help with those Lake Superior properties to determine erosion rates and building codes. And then also project coordination management, because what I do is go to meetings constantly for this. So it's a lot of work, but it's good work. So what does our landowner conservation look like on the ground? Over the last few years, so 3-4 years, we have helped 95 landowners, provided technical assistance for that. We've implemented 27 conservation practices. All the practices are voluntary. We can help people when they're in issues with enforcement. We do not provide financial assistance to them. Examples, we do cost share projects, so the landowner provides 75% of the cost. We provide 75, landowner does 25%. So here's 2 picture examples. On the left side, we had some landowners that took about 4 years to get this project in the ground. This is a creek that got just exploded with water issues, partially due to watershed changes, development, roads, culverts, more water being directed into this stream. And so we're able to work with our engineers and get this project on the ground. On the right-hand side, you can see what it looks like now. The stream's been connected to the floodplain again. That bank on the left and the bottom is now that bank that has the trees growing in it. This is the outlet that's right before Cut-Face Creek, where it's got that big area. And if you notice, the water is much cleaner and there's not as much water there. It's because of this project. And the landowners are thrilled. They're super excited. They send us videos like monthly to say how happy they are. So this is just one example of a project that we do. And so, sorry, Teresa. So these are just things that we do. We work with culvert inventory, we plant trees, we're looking at soils, we do Lake Superior monitoring. Conservation practices help with keeping the soil and water clean. It's good for our health, it's good for our environment, it's really good for the local economy. Depending on where you're at, these are all the things that they can help. So over the last 5 years, we brought in $1 million for landowner assistance. So a few highlights of some of the larger projects. For example, the Lutzen River, Papa River, it's now delisted from being impaired. So it's off the EPA list, it's off the NPCA list. The problem was it had too much sediment loading going into it, so that's what it was impaired for. We solved that by over 15 years of work with the PRNB from our office. Millions and millions of dollars have been spent, not just through grants, but also from the landowners, to implement practices, stream restorations, bank civilizations, dewatering, large amount of practices to delist that river. So now we'll work with the area to do maintenance and operation and help to keep that river delisted. Another project that we've done recently, just to highlight, is we worked with the Grand Portage tribe, which we're excited about. They contacted us in MnDOT and said, we've got these Gabion baskets, which are on the right-hand side. They were installed a long time ago. Storm events, changing weather patterns, just time had caused those baskets to become loose. And so they were causing issues with the habitat for the fish, possible issues if we had a large rain event that they would take out Highway 61. So they said, hey, we need some help. We were able to get funding from MnDOT. We worked with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. TSA 3 is our engineers, Technical Service Area 3. And Laboda was awarded that contract. We were with Floral Natives. They did the planting. Do the next picture. And so there's what it looked like on the side on the right. We installed toewood, so that's large trees, creates fish habitat. Our engineers designed the river to look like a natural flowing river with pools, ripples, and runs. And here's what it looks like afterwards. Healthy river, we were able to release trout. Yeah.
I got a call from Dwayne Hill yesterday. This project got submitted to the governor for a governor's award.
Oh, wow.
So Dwayne's going to keep us. It's a multi-agency project that got going a lot faster than we thought it was going to.
Yeah, we did too.
We thought it was going to take years. And
yeah, it was done in a year. So
Yeah.
it was like the year they called, the next year they're like, we want it done. We're like, okay, we'll make it happen. And so it was a great collaborative effort. Our conservation technician, Phil Larson, was the lead for this project. I will not take any credit. And he did a great job with it. Other opportunities we've worked with, or we're still working with, we helped Grand Marais with their stormwater management plan. The county said, thank you for this. You provided match of $22,750 to provide match to go towards our stormwater management plan. Without that match, we probably wouldn't have gotten that plan done. It had been 20 years since they've had a stormwater management plan. Through the plan, we now have GIS files. We have a model now, so when developers call, we're getting our engineers trained. They're going to be able to say, here, can you throw this in the model? Do you have the actual right stormwater management practices done for your development? So we can use the modeling for our projects. We're pretty excited. There's been a lot of really good things that came out of that plan. It's identified areas for concern, areas to look at now. We've got at least 5 rain gardens already installed. We've got 4 more landowners that have heard about the stormwater management plan or have come forward. They've been identified, so it's like bang and spot on. So we're working to try to get those implemented with funding. We're working with the city with the Highway 61 remodeling, again identified in the stormwater management plan. We're looking at doing some other projects, so we're really excited for all these opportunities, and the funding the county provided really helps that. We do stormwater monitoring on Lake Superior to make sure that that water coming in isn't hurting the harbor or near shore. And then this year we're going to expand it to, we've got youth who are really excited to do some monitoring, so we're going to have them do some look at the creeks coming through the city and just go out and take a little meter and readings, and they can help do some citizen science. So good things are happening. We're excited about that. We do a lot of education outreach. I'll leave these here for you to look at. We've done a shoreline brochure. These go a lot to our lake associations. These are tailored to Cook County. So it's not for anywhere else. We're making a very large one that's tailored to Cook County. It's kind of like the Property Owner's Resource Guide, but it's more just for the lake owners. So that'll be a good larger resource for folks. We have inserts that we put in a couple times a year to the newspaper. This is our information that we provide to legislation. So I'll leave those there. We work currently with 12 lake associations with developing lake management plans, and that's a pretty big deal to get all of them on board. They've done countywide surveys. So we're sharing that information. It's going to be public information as to what folks are looking at. It was developed for a 5 to 10 year look out. We found that things like fiber optics are changing the way people are using the land because they're staying on the property longer. Well, that impacts septic, that impacts water usage, that impacts power, use of the land, and that'll impact the lake water quality. So these are all things that we're looking at working with the lake associations. Overall, we're working with 17 lake associations. We've done over 20 workshops for all different age groups and topics. And we've reached over 4,000 individuals over the last few years through different resource education outreach opportunities. We also do the monitoring. We've done over 20 inland lakes monitoring in at least one river. We're doing 5 sites in Lake Superior. We're with over 35 volunteers who continue to come year after year. They're engaged and they work with NPCA once they're done with our program, so they're monitoring now on their own as private citizens. So we're pretty excited about all that. It's good to get the baseline of water monitoring and quality, because if things change, we're aware of it. Also means that something on the land has changed and we can figure out what's going on. That's all I have for a quick update. I don't want to take too much of your time. I just want to say thank you on behalf of our district and our board for all the collaborative work we've done over the years. We look forward to more years. We appreciate the agreement that we have with the county. It really helps to keep our office doors open and to have the SB County employees. And our door is always open. I think everyone has stopped in. So it literally is always open because it's only air, but you're welcome anytime to come ask questions to myself or to our board. So at that time, does anyone have questions?
Thank you. Wow, you are a busy group.
We're a busy little office.
Yes. Questions, comments? Yes.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for all your work. I mean, you just documented very nicely how important it is, and I think everyone in our county can really appreciate the importance of water and water quality. So thank you very much. I really hope the state I hope the state doesn't cut at all. We need you.
We're a very unique county in Minnesota with all our riverlets and the way our geology is presented here. We need, and you keep track of it very well. Anything else anybody'd like to comment on?
Thank you, Teresa, and your staff.
Okay.
Thank you for all the work that you do. Just a reminder to this board, like she said, it's elected, so their budget goes through their board. As you saw in our update, there's a reason why our meetings are over 2 hours long. We get a lot of updates and a lot of time. In order to keep their staff, they have to continually find money. And the amount that they've asked from the county has not, you have, like the rest of them, been a trooper and cut your budget down so that we could get the levy down when you needed to. And so thank you for that partnership. I have the luxury of being on the Soil and Water Committee, the Planning and Zoning Committee, and the Firewise Committee. And after I figured it all out as a commissioner, I was horrified because they all are land management and resource, but you all have to work together. And so you've got Firewise telling to clear 30 feet. You have a property that's only 30 feet wide, and you should be keeping things on your property so you don't have erosion when you're on a hill. And so Elena and Planning and Zoning and Firewise were nice enough to come out to my property and take a look as a team to say, you know, when you tell someone to do this, and you tell someone to do this, and you tell someone to do this, I mean, it keeps everybody employed. But we should all be working together, and so it's just wonderful, the partnerships we have in the courthouse with the staff coming together, and they're not kidding, their door is open, and they are extremely busy, but they are willing to stop for a moment and talk, and there's a chair in there for you to sit in, and it's not in the corner facing the wall, so you're not in trouble. Yeah, so thank you, thank your staff. Thank you, Teresa, for that chart and keeping it all together so that you get the funding.
Thanks so much. Mm-hmm. Okay, next we're going to hear from Kristen from the Highway Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners, colleagues, and members of the public. This morning, I'm here to share a little bit about the financing of your 2019 state aid projects. So we recently authorized to advertise for bids for South Shore Drive. We received the plans back from the state, and we're expecting that bid opening in mid-June. Also on this morning's consent agenda, we are hoping to move forward with the Two Island River culvert replacement on Highway 1 in Schroeder, in addition to the South Shore Drive project. Now, typically, Cook County, I think going forward, what I would advise is planning between maybe 1 to 1.5 million in what we would call regular construction projects, meaning construction projects outside of city limits going forward in the future. But to step through some of the numbers associated with today's recommended resolution, after the county engineering transition, you currently have about $3,666,000 balance in your regular state aid construction account. Now, there is a little bit of a contingency included in the estimate for both of these projects, but the estimate for the Two Island River construction is about $400,000, and the current estimate for the South Shore Drive improvements, which include reclamation or mixing in some gravel and grinding up the pavement surface for the first portion of the road, and then full reconstruction of the second portion of the road, digging up the dirt, working on the culverts, and repaving that 3 miles. Your current estimate for that project is about $3.8 million. Now, state aid gives us a great tool for small counties like Cook County in a situation like this where we're hoping to deliver multiple projects, including one large project. We have the ability to advance 2020 state aid funds into 2019. Now, we don't know the bids for these projects yet. If all goes well, we could receive bids less than the estimate. That's always good news when we get to a bid opening and we find out that it's less than what we expected. That could happen. But if it doesn't happen, we could be needing some additional funds if we're committed to delivering both of these projects this year. So the recommendation would be to pass this advance resolution. And where the numbers come from, I reviewed the estimates for both of the projects right now. There is a 10% contingency included in construction overruns, not to mention any specific locations in Cook County, but I am aware of a history where perhaps some of the projects have been overprogrammed in the past. There are some bumps on roads that staff tells me, well, we hit poor material here, but we didn't have the money to dig it up. And we don't want to do that in the future. If we find something unexpected on either of these projects, we want the funds to be available to address it. So there is a 10% contingency included in the construction. Now, just to reiterate, this makes the money available for us, but we won't actually use this or encumber the funds, so to speak, until we open bids on a project or until we find something unexpected in construction, if that happens. So if Cook County passes this resolution today, I send that on to our district state aid engineer, who sends it down to St. Paul, and the money would be available if we need it. But if we don't need it, if we get good bids, or if we don't hit any unexpected conditions in construction, that money just carries over into your normal 2020 state aid allocation. There are no fees or penalties associated with doing something like this. There are a few counties in Minnesota that have done this year already, and Lake County has done this in the past. That was prior to my time, but for small counties who don't receive a very large state aid allocation to support big projects year after year, this is definitely a tool that's not unusual to use. So with board support, the amount of advance that we would be requesting is up to $954,220.35. And that would still leave enough of a match in your 2020 state aid allocation to deliver the Gunflint Trail project, which is currently the only project we have officially planned for next year until we get through our transportation planning process.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments?
Thanks for the explanation.
I can tell you South Shore is really excited because South Shore is County Road 18 and they had been promised 18 and 18, so they're anxiously waiting. They'll not know how to drive without dodging potholes, though.
Commissioner Bershine?
Thanks for all your work on it. It's a good way to proceed. I'm grateful for that flexibility from the state.
Right.
Yep, I don't have a question. Thank you for the explanation, and it seems like a smart way to go.
Okay, after we make a motion and proceed with that, I have a closing comment. So
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign, motion carried. I'd like to acknowledge an award that Cook County Bridge Construction Award that Kristen was a part of. The highway engineer, technician Adam Nelson, Kristen, MnDOT engineer Kevin Western, Thomas Wilson with Erickson Engineering, and Laura Ziegler with AGC representative. This was pretty neat to receive that.
Thank you. We were very proud, and much credit also goes to our partnership with Lutz and Mountain Corporations, who funded the aesthetic aspects of that project, and also S&R Construction. When it comes to a construction quality award, I will definitely pass along the kudos to the staff who are out there from day to day, primarily Adam taking the lead on this project, but also Scott and Randy at the Highway Department, even more so the contractor who did great work out there.
And there were a couple other top honors that you received there at the meeting, so that's very, very great to hear for our county. Thank you so much on all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Next, we have Todd. Todd Smith, our assessor.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair.
Morning.
Morning.
I have before you today an abatement for It's a little bit different than what we normally ask for. This is a abatement for a utility company, which is Great River Energy in this case. I'll give you a little background on it. 2018, Great River Energy took the state of Minnesota to court and sued over valuations. They won. As these properties go, this is a bit of an unusual, we handle these a little differently than we do normal properties. The state gives us the values to place on our records for utility properties, meaning railroads, transmission lines, the infrastructure for power, the power grid, things like that. So they give us those values. We don't create those values ourselves, and they give them to us every year. For instance, for the 18 assessment last year, they gave me the final numbers in October. I put them in the system. That would have been for pay 19. However, the timing of the case when it was settled, they sued just about, Molly, I think it was, most of the counties had some skin in the game where they lost money. Because in winning that case, they lowered the valuations. But in the process, because of how the state sends us the information, it didn't get changed for when I was able to do it in early January. So we're changing it now through abatement. Brady's already taken care of this because they wanted it done by the 15th of May to recalculate their taxes. All told, this is a net loss of right around $60,000 for the county in tax revenue. So they're corrected now. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We're just abating these particular, I think it's 7 properties altogether, and it was just Great River Energy that sued and won. So. So, any questions?
Yes, Commissioner.
This sounds familiar with kind of what I had heard when we did our legislative meeting with Rob Eklund and Tom Bach, and in other counties it has also to do with pipelines, and this is happening all over Minnesota as well as I guess nationally. It's a thing now. I'm curious, and I don't think you'd have perspective on this at all, whether or not utility customers will see a savings of $60,000.
Well, I guess we can be thankful that we don't have a pipeline here in Cook County, because there are areas of what I believe is Carlton County that are going to that have been drastically affected by this.
Yeah.
I talked with Kyle Holmes about this, the assessor from Carlton County, and in some cases, the amount of difference in tax calculation was so extreme where some of the townships that are affected will actually be broke.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect us. We don't have an operating railroad. We have 9.25 miles of actual railroad in this county, but none of it's operating right now with the closure of the plant in Schroeder. That's one type of utility that's usually named for us to assess. Thank God it was just Great River Energy in this case. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. If maybe Molly can give her opinion on this as to, like you said, this is, I think, the next big thing. Who knows, what's going to happen with utilities, but it was a fairly large win that Great River had. I think it was $585 million or something like that. A lot of money. And with us, it's $60,000, which is not insignificant, but that's how it affected us.
Can either of you give any perspective on the basis for this overvaluation, or how the court decided that?
Yeah, it's beyond me to explain.
Okay.
And my basis is because we don't know how they value these properties. They just give us the numbers.
Sure.
They don't know if they're using market data for land or the building data, that type of thing, because there's several different categories that they give us, and we have never been privy to any of the data, how they arrive at their numbers.
Yeah.
So I can't say if it's correct or not. Obviously, this was a big case that went before the board, or before the state, and they must have proved their case. So.
Yeah, it's a,
How
talk
many
about
properties?
transparency.
How many?
7?
Was it 7? They're not listed individually. It looks like Schroeder.
It was all in, it was all over, actually. It was,
Oh.
Lutzen got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. The tiny print is what says it.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7. It was seven
Seven?
properties altogether, and they're
Okay.
basically spread out from Schroeder, Lutzen, Grand Marais, the west side, or east side, so.
So, Madam Chair, just a point that, so there's two things going on. So you have the loss evaluation, but the second thing is, the timing of these is such that we don't catch it for taxation in the current year. So it's a direct loss to the fund balance, and because you don't have the opportunity to spread it. And that's what happens with those small towns. It doesn't, 60,000, it does not impact us, you know, it isn't anything dire, but for a small town, it might be. But, so that'd be one thing. At the very least, you'd think that they could move the timing of these so as not to impact these small communities like that.
Just another reason to make sure that we protect our fund balance. Because this is just the first things that are coming on. We all hear at our meetings. Luckily, we don't have Best Buys and Shopkos here because the dark store theory is another scary issue for people, so.
Is this the first time this has happened in a few years?
It is, as long as I've been in assessing. It's, I suppose Gray River Energy thought they'd test the waters, and they must have had enough of a data to prove their point before the court to win the case. And just like Brady says, the timing of how they give us the values, you know, we create values on January 2nd of each year for the next year's taxes is how we do that. So we have the opportunity to make changes and things like, well, they give us these values in July, they give us the final values in October, and I put them in the system manually so that they're calculated for the next year's pay. So it's a whole different process, and in the way that the way that they let us know is, well, I guess just to say there's too much bureaucracy involved. It would have been nice to know ahead of time so we could have avoided the abatement, but nevertheless, here we are. Yeah, as far as the future goes, I don't know. I don't know what the plan is, if they were going to see more of this.
And how did they pick these 7 properties? What did they have on those properties that?
Well, I think they must have had to choose the properties that they wanted to, that they questioned, and these 7 properties are the ones that they chose, which had to do with, it's not just transmission lines. I think in some cases it's buildings with structures and things like that. It's you know, power points all over the county, whatever their land, whatever their ownership was. In this case, it was 7 of Great River's properties. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the tax court abatement.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion. Did you want to?
I just wanted to thank you for
Okay,
keeping
yes,
us up
thank
to
you.
speed here.
Oof, duh. Okay. Moving on to Brady. You have quite a list of things here we're going to hear
Madam
from you.
Chair, I just thought that these might be, these could have been consent, but I thought that some of them were a little confusing, and there might be a question or two, so. They'll be fairly quick. The first one's another partial release of a mortgage. This is a Highway 61 project. We've had 2 or 3 of these prior. So this is a project. Why do we have a mortgage over here? It's just through Department of Economic Development gave a grant managed by AEOA. This is through the EDA Rehabilitation to Small Business and Home program from a few years ago. So part of that grant is that they put a mortgage on a property in our behalf. The county is named so that somebody doesn't rehabilitate and then sell it quickly or something like that. So anyway, there's a mortgage on there for 10 years. So this is a partial removal of that mortgage in the right-of-way for the highway. If you look at the map, it's just the little green strip that's being released. It doesn't impact that mortgage to any extent. So I'd ask approval of that to allow this Highway 61 project.
Questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve the item A, partial release of the mortgage for Highway 61 project.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The second one, we call it the revenue recognition policy. We've had this for a number of years. Basically, what it is having a policy that your revenues come in after the end of the year, and it isn't just recognizing them. You really want to account for them in the previous year because that's where they belong. You know, stuff that comes in January and February, that's normal. So that it shows up in the correct year in your audit. But we've changed this a couple of times, once for Human Services because their grants come in later, their significant grants, so we extended it for their grants. And we've also extended it once for the payment in lieu of taxes, Boundary Waters, because it used to come in January, and then it moved to February in 60 days. Then it moved to March, and if we don't change our dates, then they don't show up in our audit. And the BWC money is almost $2 million. It has a significant skewing of our numbers. So this year, asking to extend it, we've not received the BWC money yet, and we hear that it'll be in the next few weeks, but nobody has any firm knowledge on that. So I'm asking to move this out to 180 days to be sure to catch it so that it shows up in our audit and doesn't skew our numbers, which in one sense, that's not a problem. In the other sense, the later these important payments come in, it pushes our audit off, and it pushes our financial numbers off. And we want to know our fund balance, and we need that, our audited figures to get that number each year. So it just pushes everything off for us, and it's doing this to Lake and St. Louis and anybody else who gets this kind of money. So any point you can make at your NACO meetings or what have you, I'm sure you already have, but would be appreciated. So just ask approval of this, just moving this out to 180 days for the federal in lieu of taxes payment.
I'm hoping those letters that we sent help push things along, too. I don't know what else. I mean, you appear before the group in Washington, D.C., and you do everything you can, but personally, I hope that they helped from our counties.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we had a N-Club, that's Northern Counties Land Use Coordinating Board, meeting the first week in May, and John Angaro, who works for St. Louis County on policy, he's a lobbyist, did give an update, but it's all speculative still. There is a glimmer of hope. There was rumors that it was going to be a 30% decrease. For us, that's quite a bit of money. And in our budget, being so small, but now they're thinking that it is possible that they're reassessing things, and have you heard about that at all, Brady?
No.
So there's more hope than I think we had initially, and that they're going back to try to figure out, because it's going to be based upon this 10-year appraisal.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the
And that'll be
second
in
issue.
2020, yep. And
So this one's just talking about timing, but you're talking about the valuation. Every 10 years, the BWCA lands are reevaluated, and we get 0.75% of the value of the land. So when they reassess that, it's really important that they get the correct valuation. And I think the rumor we heard, I think I heard it from you. You heard it from them that they might exclude the lake part of the acreage in that valuation. So
it's
hopefully
really
they're-
kept a secret, I don't know. But they're thinking that they're trying to refigure it because the appraisal was so far off of the previous one, and the tax, our real estate values appraisals are high according to our counties. Our appraisals are not going down for land, but the government's was, and so they're hoping that they might reconfigure that. They've got Representative Stauber and Senator Klobuchar working on it as well, because it's really pretty critical for our three counties, considerable amount of money.
Mhm. So when you do hear good news, Brady, would you all send us a big, yay, we did
Yes.
it?
That is very frustrating. Is there any, we don't want it to happen. Is there any reason why we wouldn't just say, extend the period for 360 days?
We could, but we're allowed
But
to
why?
change this if we, if we need to, if it comes to that.
Okay. Well, I'll make the motion.
Support.
Okay, any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The third item is another partial release. This has to do with the Highway 61 project again. The reason we have a mortgage on this property, this is the Hungry Hippie Tacos. This is a revolving loan fund mortgage. So it's one that we placed on there directly. So again, they're just, what it says in here is incorrect. I said red, it's the green. So again, it's just a little green slice on the map. Should be attached. It's right in the highway right-of-way. That's what they want released. So it's very small, insignificant to our mortgage, and it allows the project to go forward. I'd ask approval of that.
It's interesting with the highway development, with the MnDOT, how that affects businesses and how it's coming to us for approval for certain things. And good thing they're doing it early.
Yeah, I'm sure they're doing it, city and, anybody else that has any interest in
Right.
the right-of-way.
Right.
It's not early, construction is delayed because they're still doing it.
Well,
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the partial release of this mortgage as well. That's item 7C.
Support.
any further comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Next item is a subordination agreement. This is for a septic loan. What happens with these, and I know I've been here at least once, when we do these agriculture, best management practice septic loans, we actually get the money through the state, but we have to pay that back, so we put that on as a special assessment on the property for 10 years and get that returned. But we have had the practice, based on what some other counties were doing, and just thought it was a good idea. We simply record our application in the recorder's office, but when the banks see that, they see it as a lien on the property, and they can't issue the loan unless they're in first place, so they need us to subordinate. So we're going to look at this practice again. We'll be talking with the Land Services Committee and Molly, and we may not do this again. We probably have enough security as a special assessment. We may have to tighten up how we issue the special assessment. I'm not sure. We'll talk about that. But just to not have to go through this little bureaucratic step. But in order for them to give the Grand Ray State Bank to give the loan to this property, so I'd ask you to approve the subordination.
Questions? Comments?
I'll make the motion to approve the subordination agreement.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, same sign. Motion carries.
And then next is the general fund budget review, Q1, just the general fund. We call for this in our budget policy. Just to start off, to review the form itself, so we break it into two parts. The first part, which is page 1, and then partway down on page 2, those are regular operating departments that have budgets associated with them, and that's what we're really reporting on. But then we include a number of other departments on the end of page 2 and on page 3. It just shows you all of the other departments within the general fund. They're grant departments or transfer departments like the car funds, et cetera, or just funds that hold cash, et cetera, but don't have a budget or a levy associated with them. Just so that you understand why our actual figures are different from our budgeted figures often, but they have no impact on the levy directly. So then on page 2, about a third of the way down, you get the totals for those budgeted departments. And way over on the right, you see revenues and expenditures. If you can see the revenues as the first 25% of the year are at 11%, and that's pretty typical because revenues do not follow any regular pattern. That's our BWC money, not there. There's no tax revenue yet, et cetera. So pretty much you can ignore that number. So we're mostly looking at the expense number. So you're looking for 25% to be right on for a fourth of the year. It's 27%. In general, that's because we've got one extra payroll in this first 3 months. That's just a timing thing. Sometimes you get one. So we have an extra payroll that accounts for a significant part of it. And then I'm just going to go down and highlight a few of these where the expense figure hits 30% or more. You might want to look at others or ask any questions you want as we go. So I would go back to the first page, and about the fifth one down is General Finance Administration, Department 41. And if you look over on the expense figure, it's at 53%. It's not a very big number. The main expense item in that department is just insurance that isn't assigned particularly to any department. MCIT gives us numbers, and they assign it's property casualty primarily because the work comp is pretty much divvied up by department. But so it isn't assigned anywhere. We don't go to any trouble to assign it, so we just put the rest of the general fund expense here. And that all happens in January, which is why it's high, because the whole year is done. So then the next item that's 30% dropped down about 10 items or so to 110. That's the courthouse operations, Brian Silence. And this is really typical. He's at 30%, and that's almost entirely due to snow plowing and utilities for the first part of the year. Most of the winter falls in the first half. Drop down to 226, Grand Portage deputy costs. This is 30%. It's a very small budget, about $120,000 altogether, and it's 36,000 expenses so far. The difference, the big difference there is just mileage is a little high for this time of year, 34%, or higher than the budget, I should say.
I got a question on that one. What is the Grand Portage deputy cost? Is that the agreement between Grand Portage?
That's the agreement. So it's being...
So you're receiving
yes.
from Grand Portage on
yep.
that?
And this is one we could drop below, because everything I said before, it has no levy. It's a zero levy. And so next time we will drop that to the bottom,
I think
because it has no levy.
One of the things is Grand Portage pays for an extra deputy to service the village of Grand Portage, but under Public Law 280, the county has a responsibility to patrol the reservation, so this is just an extra cost
Yes.
covered by the reservation.
Yeah, they've chosen to do that, and they pay for all of it. Drop down to 393, SCORE recycling. That is partly the same as the courthouse operations, in that their utilities, they have utility expenses that they are higher in the winter. But the main thing here is that the trailer repair, trailer purchase. So the board approved a new recycled trailer back in August, and they approved it to come from the landfill reserve that's actually in Fund 12. So we're going to transfer that. It's about $20,000. We're going to transfer that out of here, which takes care of most of that overage, which is 34%. And Tim, when I asked him about it, he said, yeah, the repair costs are high. Right now, the crusher belt, he said, I'm probably going to have to ask later this summer to replace that. He said, it's getting to the end of the life. And maybe a forklift also. So look for that later in the year. Next item that's significantly over YMCA operations, 52%. And that is primarily because of the exercise equipment that we replaced in January. It was about $52,000. There is some annual effect of winter up there also.
Brady, did we transfer the money from the maintenance budget into that Y budget when we approved that equipment, we said we would use 9,000 from the maintenance budget.
Did we?
Mm-hmm.
From the courthouse operations, 110?
Yeah, was that extra 100,000 that we had put in the budget for repairs? We said we would use a portion of that. I mean, we can.
Oh, you mean in the building fund?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see that next.
Okay.
We could transfer that out, but we're already over in the building fund. But here they had utility costs at the Y are separate from courthouse operations, and so that was high too, winter. The repairs and maintenance is at 77%. That's a $20,000 budget. That was primarily due to that, the spa, that ceiling, the leak up there that had to be the sheetrock removed and all that replaced, and the some of the ductwork up there. That was about $9,400. Caused that. Then other supplies, small equipment was over budget also, and that was primarily because they had to buy a floor scrubber, about $4,500 in other supplies, small equipment. And then the capital purchase for the exercise equipment that was used when, a lot of it was used when we bought it in 2013, so 6 years later. And that was, yeah, I'll check that.
Thanks, Brady.
Yeah. And those are the highlights. There's two very small budgets that you see that are 30%, but those are pass-through. That's the, we do levy there. A small amount for postage and a small amount for central supplies, just because we can't account for every dime of it because of whether it's sales tax or whatever when we're charging it out to departments, but basically insignificant. So I'd ask for any other questions. Otherwise, I just ask for approval of that you accept the report as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Any further comments or questions? Yes.
I just had citizen questions about this spreadsheet, and I want to thank you for going through it, Brady, here at the meeting. It clears things up significantly, and it's just great to get an update.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
And at the last meeting, we asked for an update of the building fund status. I don't remember what order you're going to see them in, but there's a budget report, budget to actual. So we budgeted $150,200 for the year, and currently we're at, we've spent $190,000. Now, no revenue has come in, so that we're just collecting taxes now. So we'll receive approximately the $150,000 in tax revenue. And the $190,000 that we've spent so far, 19,000 of it is for the new alarm panel. Going into the, was that the LEC?
That was here.
That was here, yeah. The new alarm panel, new fire alarm, that it failed. And then, yeah, the boiler was the LEC, SRU. So that was about $72.68 for that cost. And then the museum basement repair, the response to that flood back a year ago in August, that was $12,000. So those were the regular expenditures that we planned on. And then we had the YMCA roof project that the board approved going forward with the design, et cetera, of that about a year ago. And the estimate at that time was that would cost about $150,000, I think, $150,000, $155,000. So this was done then in conjunction with the school doing that project, with culinary center, et cetera, so we were able to piggyback on top of that. Jeff worked with him.
It's important to note, particularly with the questions this morning, the roof projects at the YMCA that were authorized last year are on the old roof.
Yes.
That tie the old building to the new building. And we knew that those repairs were coming up. We've been talking about them for a couple of years. And last year was the opportunity to get those projects done for less than we anticipated the cost would be, because we had the contractor on site working for the school projects.
Yeah, you were getting estimates of plus 150 if we just did it.
Yeah.
And then able to save 35,000 by working with the school.
What do we do with that savings? Wow, Brady.
Celebrate.
We use it to offset that 60,000 we just lost.
And then the other expense in here was the, also anticipated, was the bathroom, YMCA daycare bathroom, so that was also, I think this is, I don't know if that's done, but that's $30,000 partial to Marshall Handyman Services. And then, so what is the net effect of that? So in here too is the trial balance report for the building fund. So you can see as of today, we started out with a balance of 693,000, and now after those expenditures, we're down to about 503. And of course, we'll be getting the 150,000 of tax revenue back. So it's still solid. Tim still has some room. I didn't break this out for, some of it is set aside for that landfill, potential landfill issues, but that we haven't seen. We set that aside 2 decades ago. In case the state, when we shut down the old landfill, in case we had to restart it, in case we had other issues with state mandates on that, but none of those have materialized, so we've just been slowly using it largely as Tim needs for land services. Trailers primarily is where it's been going. Nothing to do there, that was just information. The next item is the audit engagement letter. I'll ask for approval of that. This is a standard letter where it just explains our responsibilities, the state auditor responsibilities, what we expect of each other. The objective is to give an opinion on whether our county financial statements are fairly presented, and it describes all the audit procedures, our responsibility to provide accurate information, design adequate internal controls, the limits of the audit, including their responsibilities to provide reasonable assurance rather than absolute assurance regarding audit matters. So that's what they give in their opinion. So I would ask, they ask for approval that you see that letter, understand their responsibilities, and then approve that prior to the completion of the audit.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes.
And the last item I have is under my name because my name is on the original service agreement, but I don't really have much to do with AIS other than see the money go by. But this is for the assistant coordinator position, which I understand has been needed for a while as they've been ramping up the work involved. This is a 100% grant funded, this whole department. So this is for an assistant to Amanda, and I know we will be talking about how that department is structured and operates, but we won't even start talking about that till later this month. And I believe they're busy right now, fishing, lakes are open, et cetera, so they need this position filled. And Lisa Kerr is on that committee, and she is here to answer any other questions you might have about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Lisa.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
morning. There's a lot of increased work. I sit on that committee also. So thank you for helping bring this forward. Any questions to Lisa? Anything you want to fill in for us?
Well, you might have the question of why it's retroactive. Part of that is that the AIS task force doesn't have a lot of meetings over the winter. And so this initially got started at their last meeting in 2018, was to go ahead and try and find and interview and hire for the position. And then we try to make sure everything is approved through that task force before we bring it to the county board. So basically, it had gotten to that point, and that's why it's before you now, because it's a brand-new position, and so we wanted you to see that it's a brand-new position, and it has been approved through the task force, but Jessica actually started working back in February.
Right. Okay. Questions or comments?
Well, I'm just really appreciative of the work AAS does. Talking with other commissioners in other counties, particularly like in Crow Wing County, I know it's aquatic invasive species are a much larger issue there, and it's a lot harder to deal with the issue when it gets larger. And so I'm really thankful that we're proactive as much as we can be dealing with it.
There was a big article in the Sunday paper about what's happening to our lakes in Minnesota, and even stricter regulations are going to go into some areas, so we'll have to just keep our head above the water, as they say, and hopefully try to do what we can do here in Cook County. Okay.
So this is just a contract service position?
So we need an approval, motion?
Yes.
So we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments to approve the AIS Assistant Coordinator? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break because we have quite a bit yet to go through. Come back in about 10 minutes.
11 o'clock hearings that I have to be at upstairs.
That's fine. Construction contract.
Did you send me the rest of it? Did somebody send me the rest of it?
My coffee pad, Myron.
Construction contract. Obviously, the rest of it was related to the roof contract.
Oh, the whole thing.
Do we need to notice a public meeting? Two of us are going to
Public events.
Can I ask you something?
You go fishing for the opener?
No.
I didn't either.
I took my boat out. I went and looked at a boat on Friday over in Bayfield.
Oh, okay. For the big lake?
Yeah, this is 6 no, but I went and looked at that. Then I took my boat out Sunday to ride around the day. Other than that,
Did many people fish out in the day?
everything's deep right now, so.
A couple of young guys on the lake, Bo and Josh, were out fishing, and they didn't catch anything. I'm not gonna go.
I'm very.
I sat on the dock and read a book and got sunburned on my face. I forgot to put lotion on.
Yeah, I've been getting sick for about a week.
Is that right? What's going on?
Head cold.
Well, I haven't had one yet.
I was having a heart attack.
Jeez. That's not good.
No.
So you're getting rapid heartbeat?
Better go visit some others. He's going to join the
Why, thank you. Well, and it's a discussion not to be had. I think it's proactive. We're saying, you're not in this county. They can do that, they're not. My main message for people who talk to me about this is us getting involved in this will have unintended consequences. Because sometime down the line, when we do want to enforce they were biased against us from the start. They targeted us from the start. And that's why, whatever. So, that's why we can't make any promises. I'm not inviting you. I mean, if people want to do something, make sure that they're reporting suspicious stuff. They see something that looks like a crime, that looks like human trafficking, that looks like underage sex. Here's what would be appropriate: have the sheriff present to us about what human trafficking looks like. Don't even mention that. The sheriff present whatever else we're concerned about.
Well, the old road had a different angle, that's probably, so there was the front yard.
Is it appropriate at either, or is it more of like a general public kind of a presentation? But yeah, that would be something we can do, because we're not targeting this is a criminal behavior.
I have a property on County 7 and I got a check.
Let's target criminal behavior.
30 years ago, wide, like 3 feet, so I got paid. 3 feet, right, still I didn't, you know.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
Yeah. And these shoes I bought 3 years ago for my sister's wedding, and she was a runaway bride. And she's allegedly getting married in August up here. And I'm like, I'm not saving it till the end of summer. Because maybe if I wear them, she won't run away. And the camera can hear me, so she can watch a video about me talking about her being the runaway bride.
So she ran away from a wedding and now she's actually married again.
Yeah, and the last wedding was the save the date, don't forget the date, everything planned out. It went out there, stuff envelopes with her, and with the envelope stuffing, she's like, I can't do this. And they had a house and everything, and she wrote it out. And then this one, it was, I'm going to go to Emery over Labor Day weekend and check out venues for maybe next year, the legislation. I'm down there in April for 3 days, not a mention of anything, and then she starts asking me questions about marriage license, and I'm like, what is going on? Oh, we're gonna get married on that weekend. And I'm like, do you not care about your brother? So now she's getting married. She's not planning a wedding, she's getting married. She got engaged the other day after she planned the wedding. So we'll see what happens.
Stacy, did we get the copy from, what's her name this morning? She left copies there on the table, I thought.
I'm gonna need that. I just said those there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, though, I can give them to you later.
I missed it. I hold that list. I put them on your desk. Oh, okay. I just grabbed it without looking to see what I read.
But once you get them, with the others, I already put them there. All right, thank you. Actually, you want to
Oh, yeah, from Donna.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
okay.
This. Oh, this is the same thing, okay.
Oh.
So there's that, and it looks like, there's that.
Oh, two separate, okay. All righty.
gas station.
Do you write a lot, or do you just check on the notes?
No, I
You
write
lot.
a
Okay.
lot.
Yeah,
So hopefully, once I can read this later
and
and
then you have to take it up and submit it?
Brady approves everything.
Well, and I'm sure you done a great job.
No, there's occasions where he's like, where we've had to go back. I said, that's what I heard. And that's why, I don't think that's what they meant. Because you know how I said,
I've been secretary.
Sure, right. Well, yeah.
Huge Senate.
I already saw this.
Right.
That's the stuff from Donna.
That would just be interesting. If we're the ones that should be set by the state, if we can go back.
You'd have to be really sure when you're legislative for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Too.
Tennis club last night.
He drinks it.
He does, but so do we, so does the public.
And,
But like, do you want a little jar?
no, that's no. What he said.
These are things that keep you up at night.
The 3 times they go, 5 times they go past the roof.
Okay, well, as long as it's all legal, you know.
Or do we just stop recording?
Might be illegal to have a tip jar on his desk.
So that's what I was wondering, that part, yeah.
As long as it's less than $5.
Just because
he's
it's
elected.
minutes
As long as it's
are
less
the
than
documentation of the
$5.
transaction of the business of the
Good.
board. And until it's business, it's not minutes.
Oh, I should have been signing these this whole time. Jeez.
I can't believe, you're gonna be here all day. This won't take that long.
Oh. Really?
The rest of this?
No.
I don't know. Depends.
Motion at the tennis club last night.
Depends on questions.
Spend the money in the ground.
Let's see.
But it's on and on, trying to get the language as simple as that. We had, the grant was given us, we already spent some of the money, but, you gotta go through all the little, 7 different items, some were for 20 t-shirts, small items, but the guy managing the grant didn't have a full list of stuff yet, and he wanted more money. He said, a lot more money. Spend the grant first, and see how much more money.
That's from Donna this morning.
Go over smoothly. Oh, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and they're
Alrighty.
they're not
Oh, I
the
see.
fun job.
Okay.
So it's
Their
hard to
handout.
get, there aren't enough volunteers to go around for that. I could have a full-time
Hitter.
volunteer job.
Okay. Back to business. So next on the agenda, we have Administration 2018 Annual Report.
And yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Judy Hill, and I'll be presenting the annual report.
Okay.
And I'm going to try standing. And I'd also like to thank April for preparing the presentation. So the next slide. This is our department head layout. Most of the department heads report directly to our county administrator, Jeff Cadwell. Elected positions, technically they report to the citizens of Cook County. So the elected department heads are the attorney, the auditor treasurer, the recorder, and the sheriff. In this slide, I wanted to review a few things. For example, full-time equivalent, that's something that we look at. Now, the FTE is not actually an employee. FTEs are calculated based on hours worked divided by 2,080, because there's 2,080 hours in a year if a person works 40 hours a year. So FTEs are kind of combinations, because we could have several part-time employees, or we could have some employees working overtime, so they may actually be putting in more than an FTE. Some may be putting in less than an FTE, but the FTE helps us figure out how to staff departments, and in the long run, how to budget. And so our FTEs have gone up from 2016 through 2018. They've gone up a small amount. Let's see. Our two highest departments, or our three highest departments, not surprising, departments that have the most FTEs would be the Highway Department. On this chart it says Road and Bridges, Public Health and Human Services, and the Sheriff's Department. And then the next. We also like to look at turnover rates. Our turnover has been fairly steady. Generally, it's nice to have as low of a turnover as possible. And I was hoping to get a comparison to a national average, but it's a little bit hard to find the national average for turnover, and it does vary by industry, local government versus federal. So one thing that's good to look at is our turnover rate fairly steady? We want to see, does it jump up a huge amount? And it has been fairly steady, around 13%. I do want to mention, sometimes as unemployment decreases, the turnover rate could increase. Ours has been fairly steady. Accomplishments. We've accomplished quite a bit in 2018. One thing we did is the online open enrollment. So a few years prior to that, staff enrolled in their benefits all on paper, and we submitted them on paper, and we've gradually transitioned to all online enrollment. And in November of last year, staff completed their online open enrollment, which means they logged into a computer, went to the Kronos website, selected the benefits, and submitted their benefits. We also updated the employee handbook. It hadn't been updated for several years, and we've put that on a schedule to update every 2 years from this point forward. And we also completed the comp study and implemented new job ratings at the beginning of 2018. There were several staff recognition awards. In your report, you have a more detailed list. You have, I think, 11 staff members mentioned in your report. We've been working on more community involvement. I mean, the government is community, isn't it? But we also are working on community involvement in terms of volunteer activities. We have a blood drive. We had started one annually, September of every year, and now we have 2 blood drives. We'll be doing a March and a September blood drive. In the September one last year, 49 units of blood were collected. And last year, for the first time, we participated as a county in the Fisherman's Picnic, and we hope to do that again this year. Projects coming this year, switching to Kronos for payroll services. Kronos is an online human resource management program. Right now we're using it for managing benefits and onboarding, offboarding of employees, performance reviews, and we're transitioning to managing it for payroll, doing direct deposits for employees, and tracking employee payroll-related data. We're also implementing employee development programs this year. In fact, Wednesday we have our staff development opportunity in the afternoon on managing conflict. And And we're working on public communication, increasing transparency. One thing we've done is we now have a County Connections article. So on your screen is a sample of one of the County Connections article that was in the paper, I think maybe a week ago. It says May
3rd.
May 3rd, thank you. And the other thing is our website, we're working on developing that more. And so in the last couple months, we've added the human resource page. And on the human resource page, this one isn't an active link, but any member of the public can look at job classifications, our employee handbook. They can click on employee contracts or employee wage data. The wage data is a year-end summary, but we can keep it fairly up to date. And let's see, do you have any questions?
That's a great review. Thank you for putting all this together and helping us and the public understand how we can work together here, support each other, and do things that we see a weakness, we go for improving it. Yes.
Madam Chair, there's one of the points that comes up publicly is that the county is always adding positions. And so our thought in providing an annual report for personnel and administrative operations is just that turnover report is important to understand. The number of FTE, when that number changes, it's because a new position has been brought to the board and approved by the board. And that any replacement of every position is also authorized by the board. So it's important to take a look at the FTE report and then to take a look at the turnover report. And it's really, this organization will have turned over within another couple of years. When we see people retiring 5 or 6 a year, we know that they're retiring with 20 to 30 years worth of service to the county and 20 to 30 years worth of institutional memory. So that's important to understand as well. Just so the turnover statistics are important, but not insignificant are the employee development and the employee contributions other than just the work that they do here at the county.
I guess I'm a little curious about our turnover rate. Excuse me. I know that having lower turnover helps with efficiency, and just a good healthy culture. I don't have a good perspective on what's low turnover, what's high turnover. Can you help?
It really can vary. So I was Googling numbers just before this presentation to see what's a good comparison. I have seen county numbers in the 17 and 18%. General industry can be sometimes as high as 25%, but a lot of times government is lower, generally has a lower turnover. I think our numbers are fairly reasonable, and I guess what would be alarming is if we saw a big change in turnover.
All right. Commissioner Duesberg?
I was just at Futures again last week with the Association of Minnesota Counties, and I've mentioned to you all before, Minnesota will be short at least 350,000 people for jobs in the next 5 years. And so to keep that turnover rate low, and, kudos to our staff for the comp study, the wage study. Many of the union negotiations were hard discussions of why do I stay here when you're not meeting other counties' wages. It's hard to say. And it was a hard discussion that we had for 2 days down at AMC about how we as counties are going to address it. And then that evening, again, winter isn't over in Minnesota apparently. And there was a commissioner sitting there taking phone calls about road problems. And I'm like, well, what's going on with your engineer? Do you know how many engineers there are in the state of Minnesota, Heidi? I can't have my engineer upset. He can't take these phone calls. I need to do it so that we don't lose our engineer. And I'm like, holy. And we share an engineer, and that's how scary it is with skilled workers and where we're at. And so it's just frightening to hear the numbers and, people think that this wall in the southern of the United States of America isn't going to affect us. Well, it does affect us. It affects us when they can work somewhere else and not come to Minnesota. It's all trickle down. So thank you for all the stuff that we do, our Safety and Wellness Committee and our staff meetings and the different programs that we're trying to provide. And the new Wednesday, I'm really bummed out that I have a meeting and I'm going to miss conflict management because as a commissioner, you know, I need that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else we can do to keep and retain people and let the staff know how important they are to us, not just because there's a lack of other people, but we are just damn lucky here to have the people that we have because they are very talented.
Yes, and we've had extraordinary luck with some of the recent hires and very lucky, and they seem to want to come here to live, and that's great. And we try to help them with housing and whatever it is, but we'll probably be hitting the wall in another, short time about just the lack of, but let's hope not. The employee development changing or managing conflict, who's going to conduct that?
Well, April and I are going to lead that, and in this one, we're using Skillsoft. We purchased Skillsoft software, and we're promoting the staff using more online training. And in this one, we're doing kind of a hybrid course. So we'll show part of the video, then we'll stop. We're going to ask some questions, have people interact, and do some role playing, and then show the video again.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you for putting that together. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, on the 2019 projects, a lot of the public comment that we get is on transparency and communication. And this one part here is holding open town hall meetings. We're already at the 14th of May. We haven't had one open town hall meeting yet. I think when we voted on the meeting schedule at the beginning of the year, one of our things was to go out and have town hall meetings, and we're halfway through the year and we haven't had one yet.
I'm bringing that up a little bit later this morning.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the website is greatly improved, and I always suggest to people to go on the website and look for the information, and then if they still have more questions, get back to us, because there's a lot more there, and there's a lot to go through, but if you have one goal, then look that up and then move on. So thank you all for doing that, too. Anything else on this? Okay, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I think I'm up next.
You got B, yep.
So the next item on the agenda is to ask for you to accept the resignation and approve the posting of Deputy Sheriff. Deputy Coleman has retired, and we're asking for acceptance of her retirement request as of May 9th. And then we're asking for approval to post for a deputy full-time.
Motion to approve with regrets.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I'm a little curious procedurally why this was not on consent agenda and our emergency management services position was. It was I think it's pretty typical for personnel stuff to be on the consent, or?
Generally, when we ask for a posting, we put it on the request.
Thank you.
If it had just been approved the retirement, that would just be consent.
Gotcha.
But the posting was the request.
Thank you very much for clarifying.
Yes.
I would like to ask Brady, was the number that Ben gave this morning, the $140,000 the city pays the county for
Yes.
services, correct?
Yeah, that's,
And how many cops, police officers do we supply for that $140,000?
well, I think Pat should speak to that. I don't know what he actually supplies. in addition
They
to
have
the
two
normal-
deputies who are specified as city, but they have other responsibilities within the county. So it's not two full-time deputies assigned to the city.
And Pat does approach the city regularly about the contract. I mean, it has a conversation with them about services provided. It's not that we haven't addressed it over 20 years.
It's, I'd say it's another, I mean, it's a good point, and I think it's another item we need to have negotiations with the city. There's a number of them. And it is something the city is aware of and not looking forward to, because it is a pretty good deal for them. But there's more than that conversation, I think.
Brady and I met with Mike Roth over the Christmas break, and Mike suggested that the city was interested in discussing these contracts. The primary contracts that the city and the county have are for law enforcement services, for the YMCA, and for road maintenance and snow maintenance. And basically, they said that they wanted to invite the board down to a conversation, to have a discussion about those three primary contracts. We have a lot of others, and I reminded Mike recently that we're waiting for his invitation to come and have that conversation.
I'd like you to remind him again, and sooner rather than later.
Well, we could also invite them up here, you know.
Right.
One interesting, as far as roads are concerned, one interesting other point was just 4th Avenue West. There's been city-county stuff, so that's part of the roads thing. But there's a number of, and some of them, there's even some things that aren't necessarily in writing. So it's just good to get clarity there. But it's a good point, so thank you for bringing it up after the public comment.
And I think because of this and these other things, we could extend an invitation within the next month. Okay? So I could put it on my list, or Jeff could put it on his list and get it done.
Yeah, how do you see that proceeding? Is that?
Coordinating schedules between this board and the city council is not an easy thing to do.
No.
I want to be there too.
That makes it even harder.
Well, we throw out
It's
2 or
not
3 dates.
impossible, but
Yeah.
we'll try.
5
We should-
o'clock. City council meets in the evening, right?
Yeah,
So we could do a
6:30.
late afternoon. I don't know. We could just throw a few ideas out there, get it going.
Yeah, it's important, though.
It's, one thing that's really important to note is that these services are going to cost what they're going to cost, and pushing money around from the city tax base to the county tax base or vice versa isn't going to change how much these things cost. And the allocation of those dollars and the resources and matching the community services up to the appropriate level of resource or tax base is important. That's what this conversation is about. There's not going to be any economies of scale or savings because we're still talking about public dollars. And anybody that lives, I will tell you this, anybody that lives within the city of Grand Marais, every $100,000 we shift from the county to the city will cost people in Grand Marais $100 per a significant amount more, because they have significantly less tax base to spread that money across. And so there's no magic bullet. There's no way to just, this is what's going to fix the tax levy. It's just not. And now, if the agreement is that we don't need to provide these services, that's fine. But this request to replace this deputy is based on Pat's assessment that that's the number of deputies that they need to continue to provide services. If you refer back to the FTE report, you'll see that law enforcement has been very consistent with the number of FTEs that they've been carrying over the number of years. I think they're up 1.5 over the last 3 years.
Well, in
My
many
question
cases,
this
you know-
morning came from a resident of the city, so maybe he was making that suggestion because he wanted to pay higher taxes. We don't know.
So we can look to schedule that meeting, but that is this we're talking about now is
Well,
posting
right
for
now.
this position.
Right. But I think we need to look back into what were the agreements for the contracts with the Y and the law enforcement. There would be some teeth there to
We
look
look
at
at the
that.
Y contracts a lot.
I know, that's it. Yeah.
I mean,
If we look at the Y contract and the actual Y budget, that we'll understand that most of what was said in the public and most of what was said this morning in public comment is inaccurate. The budget initially may have been $220,000 to be split between the city and the county, but we'd never spent that little. And we are not spending as much as people think we are spending on the YMCA either. So,
And how
most-
quickly we forget, you know, the agreements that we've had in the past and the support we've had with each other with the city, and that the city used to operate a pool at a significant loss. And our contribution to help them was very low. I mean, yes, it's good to have these conversations. It's great for us to sit down with the city and evaluate what we're doing and what we can do better. It's just, it's a lot of stuff that we do together to provide services to the community, and that's what both of our boards are trying to do, is to provide the best services to the community, not fight about who should pay for what. A little bit of that, but.
Okay, so we will do the task that's before us right now, to accept the resignation and retirement of Deputy Julie Coleman, with regrets. So we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Thank you, Judy.
So next before us, we have an 82-page contract with Jamar Contracts for the courthouse roof. So Jeff, just kind of briefly, could you summarize and bring us up to this point?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is, we opened the bids last year to do the roof project as part of the capital projects in the 2017, when was the bond issued? 2018A bond issue for capital projects. And we knew that we were going to be addressing windows, and we were going to be addressing the roof. And so the long form of this is the standard architectural agreement between the builder and the contractor and the owner. And then the second portion of this is, because of the year, we had to extend the deadline. So this has been reviewed, the limits have been reviewed. There are some places where you still see some strike-through language, but all we are basically doing is saying that's the language that we're accepting. And it's for specifically the roof on this building for $104,000. And they'll begin that work. I know they're excited, they're anxious to get going so they can get it done. So as soon as we approve it, they'll be here working on it.
Okay, so questions, yes.
So this was all kind of worked out before, not that I would have been involved with it necessarily anyways directly, but it worked out before I was on the board here. And I was just curious about the rubber roof versus like a metal roof. Can you get is that into the weeds too much, or?
It absolutely is in the weeds beyond my capacity. Between Brian Silence, our maintenance director, and the architect who was working up this bids, they came up with the scope for the project, and they were looking at a replacement of an existing rubber roof.
Okay.
Brian's been asking for this since the day I've been elected. So I'm really glad to see that we're moving forward on it.
Questions or comments? Commissioner DeShaw?
It does have a 2-year warranty.
On labor or the roof itself?
So that warranty, are you referring to the one on page 205?
215.
That warranty, or?
215, 1.06A1.
Which page?
Page 215.
The materials, I believe we spec materials with a 20-year warranty, and the installer's warranty would be 2 years.
Okay. Because we've had situations in the county that we're all very aware of, and we seem to, in the public comment, become even more aware of what's been happening in the past. That's why this really needs to, we have to understand that if there's problems, that they will come back and correct them. So, is it a 2-year warranty on their work?
On joints and seals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what about the materials itself?
The materials, I think, are warranted for 20 years.
For 20? Okay. So materials would be the membrane, insulation, bituminous flashing, joint covers, and fascia. Fascia, I was going to say fasciitis.
Fascia.
Fascia, okay. You know, I did my roof last year. I think the cost of doing this roof is quite reasonable, considering the size of this building.
I think estimates were 150 way back when.
Yes.
Yeah.
When Brian was asking for it to be in his budget.
Mm-hmm. So it's, in one way, it's good to wait. And were they the only ones that submitted a bid?
No, there were two bids
There were
submitted,
two?
Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, and they're from Duluth, that's good. Do they bring up their own people, or do they hire local too?
Madam Chair, that's not actually a question we can ask.
Well,
And
they are going to have...
I'm not sure where they hire their crew from, but that's not part of,
the agreement?
the agreement. It's not part of the negotiation.
So they've asked to have the building open at 7, from 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And I would imagine there's going to be lots of material sitting somewhere for a while. Get it all up on the roof, and do they have an estimate at how long it'll take? They'll start when? Well, as soon as we approve, right, but...
Weather
reasonably.
pending. You better talk to Mother Nature.
They'll start May 29th, or is there a starting time?
Madam Chair, that would be negotiated after we sign the contracts.
Okay,
They extended the deadline to complete the project, so they would do it sometime between the day that we approve this. They knew we were going to be taking action on it today, and the end of the period.
so within a reasonable amount of period of time, we can expect, once they start, unless we have, rain for 2 weeks and they can't do it, that it would be a reasonable amount of time it would be done from
Yes.
start to finish.
Yes.
It can't snow either.
No. Maybe June 1st, would be a good starting date. Okay. And everybody in the courthouse is okay with starting at 7? Having 7 to 4? Guess so. And is anybody going to oversee it? Or do we?
Brian Silence will be overseeing the
He will.
maintenance project.
Okay. That's good to know. Brian can fit it in with everything else. Good for him. He's so excited about this, though, I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will be up on the ladder looking also. Okay. There was a lot to go through. But for me, it was the warranty and the aftermath of what happens if whatever happens. Anything else we need to bring up to discuss?
Madam Chair, do we have to approve that contract?
Mm-hmm. Just making sure everybody has a chance to ask questions and understand the involvement with this project.
And just to clarify, I would ask for a motion to accept the contract and the amendments.
Yes. Okay.
Madam Chair, does Molly need to review this yet?
She has.
She's signed up, okay.
Okay, then, if nothing else, I will hear a motion to accept the JMAR contracts and the amendments.
So moved.
Second.
Further questions?
How, can you help me with the pronunciation of the company?
Jamar.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your honesty.
Jamar.
Jamar, okay.
Mhm. Okay, there's been a motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Let the pounding begin. All righty. So what we have now, the procedures, and I would suggest we look at a few things right now and then continue on, because it's a lot to go over and discuss, but I think it's good to review both ourselves and for Commissioner Mills, who came on board, and go through this diligently, I would say.
Yep, Madam Chair, after the April 16th Committee of the Whole, we summarized the conversation with 3 questions. One was related to the board schedule and the committee structure. One was related to the recording and streaming of meetings, and another one was related to public comment and the schedule of public opportunities to interact with the board. This is kind of a draft summary borrowing from Scott County. Itasca County has a shorter one. The primary reason this one is longer than the Itasca County one is the operating, I think, Section 5, the rules of procedure are spelled out in this one, and they're not spelled out in the Itasca County one. So really, this could go, I think the county board organization is pretty much set to state statute and standard. I don't know which of the questions you prefer to address first.
Well, we can go in chronological order here, just starting off with the organization. Have you all had a chance to read it? That would be the first thing. Okay, very good. Any questions or any comments about how we're organized? Anything you want to add in there, take out? Because we're reviewing this for the future,
So
for
you're
now and the
just-
future.
Are you looking at, what page are you on?
I'm just on page, the overview. Purpose.
Overview, okay.
Yeah, anything there?
On overview, no.
Okay.
Now, obviously, an overview, the items highlighted in yellow are the mission and the vision statements, which need to change because those are the ones from Scott County.
Which is a little confusing because it says Cook County.
Do you know how you actually adopt things without changing, when you use a lot of statutory language? Is you take somebody's document who
Oh, yeah.
did that and you use a find and replace.
Sure. I see what you're saying. Okay.
So you find everything with Scott and replace with Cook.
Cook, yeah.
And then you still have to work to go back through and
Yep.
fix that. So you just highlight those things and say, those are decisions that we have to make. Cook County does have an adopted mission statement, which is on the top of our agenda. We have not, and this is part of the answer to one of the public comment questions this morning, we could not reach a consensus on the county vision. And that's why this process has stalled. And that's why we need to get the board back to working on strategic planning, because it's very difficult for county staff to operationalize a mission statement without a vision and some direction. So those are there. Amendments to the operating rules, very standard. County board organization, item number 3 is.
I have one on item 2, sorry. Any member of the county board may initiate action to amend the operating rules. Can we change that to an annual review like we do with the handbook, rather than just any commissioner can change the rules? I mean, part of why we're here today is because we, public comment this morning was you've reviewed this in 16, 17, and 19. Well, we've never had this. We've reviewed how we conduct business. We've reviewed when we're having meetings or not meetings every time we have an election, it feels like. But we haven't done this yet, and I just am worried that once we do this, which will give us a guideline, it'll be too willy-nilly if a commissioner can change it whenever they want.
Well, truthfully, Commissioner Dukirk, the second line says, during the statutory meeting, the county board will review and amend if necessary and adopt the operating rules for the year.
So can we take the first line out then? Or do you want to leave it just to be a safeguard?
Well, I think
The truth of the matter is that's always your pleasure as an elected official to initiate a change, so I can't restrict your authority. This is, again, representing what the authority of the Board of Commissioners are, and as a body, to accept that somebody would make a recommendation to amend the rules. So this is just descriptive of the statutory
can
authority
do.
of a commissioner.
Okay.
and it's great to spell it out.
Well, and the fact that any time throughout the year, we can look, and with an affirmative vote for the members, we can make changes too. So, leaves us,
Well, I think
That's the
that
part
was.
that scares me.
That was Commissioner Dukirk's concern, but it is within our authority, so
Yeah,
I think
within our
it's good to
authority.
spell it out.
Right. Okay.
Should we do that right now? I'm just kidding.
Okay, County Board Organization.
Section number 3, Madam
Yeah,
Chair, is,
right.
again, it's very much from the statute, with the exception of the paragraph that Arvis pointed out about the review of the county commissioner compensation. And again, this was from Scott County. This is an example. This is not the intended review and comparison. But if there is going to be an annual review of that, it's good to place it someplace. We've also talked about, I think that's going to be discussed at an upcoming Personnel Committee meeting, that there be a regular review of county commissioner salary. So we're not proposing that you be paid on the same level and the same par as Hennepin County.
Yeah.
But I understand why that confusion existed.
Thank you for clearing that up.
So we just take that whole section out?
No, we just have to, we can either take it completely out, or we can make it reflective of what it is that our policy would be and incorporate it into this document.
Because I put a big no on my, but I don't make the choices, so.
I mean, you could just take out in the metro area, excluding Hennepin and Ramsey counties, and replace it with something about our region, or I don't know what best to replace it with, but something to compare to, I think, is valuable.
The recent wage study that AMC LMC does just came out again last week, and it includes an analysis of county commissioner salaries, so we have that information. We'll be discussing in a personnel committee, and any policy recommendation that would come out of there and then ultimately be approved by this board would go in place of this paragraph.
Is that on their website? AMC's website? The commissioner's salaries across the board?
I think so.
I'm not sure if it is or not.
Oh,
I know that
okay.
the HR staff in the counties all get access to the salary survey, and you'll
Oh.
be seeing some summaries of that coming out
From them?
from us.
From, okay. Okay.
It's interesting to say the intent is to remain competitive, because commissioners, if we wanted to have a different salary, would have to move and then run for office, so. It's not like when we hire other staff and they can move for a job.
Okay, anything else there? County board meetings?
The only item that I highlighted, Madam Chair, is the section down below on F and G. And F provides a clarification on workshops or work sessions, whereas the county board regularly conducts workshops to receive information. While the board workshops are subject to open meeting law, no formal action is taken, and the workshops are not televised or recorded. That's Scott County's policy. And that's a question that is before us. I don't think anybody's suggesting that we not record or live stream our regular board meetings. The question has been about the other meetings that the board holds. Again, I don't think we're looking for an answer today. Maybe there's a discussion, maybe there's a clarification, but I think the question is, what is our policy related to that, so that the public knows what to expect.
And that's further down in the packet, so we can have some thoughts on that later. Right? Yes.
When we do decide to finalize this in the language, when you look at the regular meetings, it doesn't state whether it's recorded or not. So if we could on each line, so that there isn't further confusion, so that we as commissioners or new commissioners or the public can pull up this policy and know for a fact, instead of just having one line that says this isn't recorded, as redundant as it is, and like every line to say recorded or not recorded. And the type of recording, whether or not it's audio or video.
Okay.
I shared a spreadsheet with you at the April 16th meeting that identified each type of meeting and each type of public input and whether or not it's recorded as a sample. And I would suggest that something like that be added as an appendix to this, so that this doesn't get really complicated and full of numbers and words,
Wordy, yeah.
but that it refer to, in much the same way that you approve an ordinance, and then you approve a fee schedule. And the fee schedule may be reviewed and changed annually, but you just, so.
That actually reminds me of something else, and I'm sure we'll find it here, but there's a specific reference to YouTube, and I don't know that we want to, as far as the policy is concerned, identify a particular platform.
That's the current platform, but it might not be the forever platform.
Okay.
G on public hearings is just a description of public hearings and our requirements. Sometimes we're required to hold them, and other times we hold them anyway. Item H, audience citizen broadcasts or requests. It's Scott County's policy that they ask people who have materials prepared or who want to present something specific that they would present it to the administrator's office so it can be included with the board packet, which seems to further the goal of transparency. If somebody has materials they'd like the board to see and consider, it'd be good for them to be included in the board packet so that the commissioners could see that while they're considering the board packet, and so other members of the public could see this citizen member's request. But they also still allow for people to walk up and participate in public comment at their meetings.
So Lake County, if you want to speak at public comment, you sign up and provide material if you have it, and there is a dialogue with that. If you come in and just want to speak, they do not say, no, you can't because you didn't sign up, but there is no dialogue if you're not already on the agenda. So that was interesting to find out.
That provides for the opportunity for the commissioners to think through and do some research over the weekend with the 3 days that you have the agenda materials.
I like that a lot. I also like this suggestion, and just with the option of not needing to, but boy, would that be helpful for everybody.
It'll be confusing because,
Yeah.
there will be, if you're not able to sign up ahead, it's going to seem awkward because someone will be having a dialogue with us and another person won't. But, the chair is very good at explaining the procedure before we start, so.
Yeah.
You could show that in a separate portion of the agenda, something that's actually prepared and it could be part of the regular agenda and not part of public comment.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, just a question. The way they have worded their workshops and public hearings, I think that I understand why we would have a public hearing, but I don't think it clarifies whether those would be recorded or not. Did I miss something?
It's not clarified in there. That's why I said we should make it clear.
Yeah. And I didn't know if would that be under public hearings, or would you just write something different?
There's
the appendix Jeff was talking about.
Commissioner Bersheim, Section I
Broadcasting.
gives their general broadcasting policy that the regular
I got you. Thank you.
that the regular county board meetings will be live streamed and archived.
There's the YouTube channel.
There it is.
See, that's the terminology, live streamed. I've always said we're recorded. When Patrick was here, that was live streamed, right?
So is this.
This is recording. Or do you
It's
call
live
this?
streamed.
It's live streamed, Madam Chair.
Okay, so it is.
There's no tape.
Okay.
It's live streamed and archived, so it's both live and it's being stored.
There's no physical media.
Okay.
Oh, and that's the recording. Is that what you're
Recording
saying?
would be a physical media that you'd have to
Gotcha.
store. This
Yep.
is digital media.
Yep. It still does not address the public hearings, but I think that's what the appendix would be for, is
Yeah.
Right.
And public hearings, we're not the only county body that has a public hearing. Planning and zoning has public hearings, which are not video live streamed, they're audio recorded.
Well, I'd just throw it out because, currently we're not following this.
What do you mean?
We've had a jail public hearing.
That wasn't a public hearing, that was a public information.
Public information.
That's different.
That was kind of like a
Where
town
do we
hall.
have public information?
That would be special.
That's the terminology that we have to really
Yeah,
spell
and so
out.
where is that, Commissioner
E is
Gifford?
special and emergency meetings, is that what you would call a public meeting, maybe?
Well, it just is quite different from what we've been doing, and I guess I just, whether I agree with it or not, it's not the issue. I think we got a lot of clarifying to do.
Right.
Yes.
And they're pretty big policy decisions because of we have been recording, and when you change something,
Yeah.
we got to be very careful about that.
Right. Yeah, a public hearing, if Molly was here, she would tell you, is a very specific.
There are specific instances where public hearings are required. And then
Right.
there are less formal meetings
Right.
where you would be available for an open forum or to have an information session on a highway project or a construction project or any other issue in the community.
And maybe we add another, instead of
It's-
including those under special or emergency meetings, I don't know.
It's relatively interesting to note that Scott County does not have that,
Right.
which means that Cook County is specializing significantly beyond what is required.
Right.
Yes, I'm aware
We're
of that.
trendsetters.
I guess my only concern is it's really difficult to adopt someone else's language when we have, and I'm not saying that's wrong, I think we just got to be very careful. Because if we're, if we've been doing something else and we're changing it, it's a pretty serious consideration.
But we're not changing the language. Public hearings are defined by statute, aren't they?
Well,
Which is different from public information. The jail meeting was not a hearing.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem and part of the confusion is that there hasn't necessarily been consistency. And so that's what we're trying to spell out, and I agree, we need to be careful with our language here if we're going to be
Yeah.
spelling out our procedural policy.
Right, and public
So-
hearings are very, very specific. Public comment this morning, someone said they came to a meeting and they weren't allowed to speak. Well, that's because the previous meeting was a hearing. And when the hearing is closed, the comment is closed. And that is why there was not further comment accepted, because we are required, it was closed for comment.
that's by statute?
Yes.
Or, yes.
That's a
So I
definition of
think,
the hearing.
yeah, what I'm getting at here, I think we just got to really work through this
Right.
Yes.
carefully.
Yes.
Because there's going to be some confusion, and we don't want to create confusion
Or anymore.
Anymore. That's why I'm really glad we're doing this, because we'll have something to refer to.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeff, for finding this and starting the process, getting us
Yes,
working
yeah.
through this.
It's helpful.
And with our input here, we'll lean on you to tidy it up a bit, too.
Okay, so let's go up to 5, rules of procedure, and then that'll be enough for now, and then we can continue on at another meeting and read more and get terminology.
So when are we going to update, are we going to do another committee of the whole to work on this? I mean, I don't want it to disappear.
No, it won't. Either committee of the whole or our next meeting, our next board meeting, either one.
And Madam Chair, I don't know that there's much utility in reviewing Section 5, the Rules of Procedure, because this is just a high-level outline of Robert's Rules of Procedure.
Well, we need to understand the procedure, that's the thing. So could we move on? I mean, do you want to go through?
Well,
procedure?
I don't know that this board has actually formally adopted Robert's Rules of Procedure,
No,
so
we haven't.
it's,
Yeah, so I think whatever's yellow there would not be pertinent to us at this point in time.
well, I think it's a decision that's before this board as to whether or not they want to adopt formal procedures or if they want to just continue to have less formal procedures, which is fine.
I'm sorry, before we go to section 5, the rules of procedure, there were some highlighted notes right before that. Were those things we wanted to look at?
Commissioner Mills, thanks for bringing that up. We have kind of a shared agreement because the administrator function is new in this county still relatively. So a significant number of the clerk responsibilities for this board are still done by Brady and his office. And so we would want to make sure that we note those things and/or think diligently about where those items would be. There are counties where the auditor still acts as the clerk, and there are counties where that responsibility falls under the administrator's office. So makes regular entries of all board resolutions and decisions is a clerk responsibility. Record the vote and member of each question submitted by the board as a part of the minutes and as part of the clerking. And that's been shared between the auditor's office and the administrator's office. Stacy takes the minutes, but then they come to our office and they get published in a minutes book. So it's kind of being done all over that. Preserves and files all business acted upon by the board. And between Brady and Molly and myself, we are trying to clean up how physically, when something gets signed and copied, Brady's office is keeping copies of that, and Molly's office is working to digitize and keep copies of those contracts and put them on a cycle for renewal so they get addressed when they need to be renewed or when they're about to sunset. And the last item, certifies under the county seal, is specifically a clerk responsibility and something that Brady's been doing well for years and years and years. And most of these things that he's doing, I've done in my past life. As a city administrator / clerk, you always did the clerking responsibilities for that city council or board. And so I highlight those as those are typically statutory or responsibilities of the administrator's office. And here they're kind of shared between the auditor and the administrator.
And so just before that, it says county administrator or designee. That would be the auditor's office would be designee. Do you see efficiencies that could be made? Are there any problems? Or you just wanted to highlight to discuss that, or do you have a recommendation on anything?
I'm just highlighting the fact that our situation is a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
This list comes from statute 375A06, talking about the administrator's responsibilities in the administrative form of government. And I just wanted to highlight that right now, we're using a designee to do those things.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now I'm comfortable going on to, sorry.
I don't think there's anything in 5, the high-level overview of the rules of procedure, that are significantly different than what we've done. So it's a matter of whether or not the board really wants to adopt a formal set of rules of order. Because that comes with the responsibility of policing yourself or naming somebody to be the policeman for the rules to make sure that we stay in line. And I think to this point, we've done very well with just friendly reminders or following along and generally having good process. Stacy's very good at identifying whether we have taken the appropriate action before we go on to the next thing. So it's up to this board. I think we've had this conversation once before in the time that I've been here, and there was no determination to formalize it. It makes the document a lot shorter if we strike this and and identify a less formal set of rules.
I don't know if it isn't broke, we shouldn't try to fix it.
Does everybody want to take that section out?
And we make corrections as we go along, especially in the voting, so that we raise our hands so that she can see who is for and not. So we see a little area where we need to improve, and we just do it. So I don't think we have-
I like section 5, part D is the part that I would just the highlighted part, I guess, is what I'd want to take out. think the B, statement of principle of rules is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the yellow.
Yeah, just the yellow, take that out.
Oh, so A, B, and C, the preliminary general principles are still,
Under section 5.
Yep.
A, B, and C, yes, keep those. Take out D. I just started seeing numbers and letters all over the place, so I was getting lost, but yeah. I think everything that's been highlighted. And that's just the Roberts rules, right? Yeah, yeah.
A, B, and C? Okay.
Keeping
D.
those.
How about D?
D was the highlighted.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything below that in section 5, below C, was my suggestion.
To leave out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's a good suggestion. Any other thoughts on that?
It was based on a apparent consensus.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
take up the balance at the next meeting, Madam Chair, or continue?
Yes.
Okay.
Balance at the next meeting, the next board meeting. Okay with everyone? Yep. Okay,
May 28th.
yes.
Okay.
All right, so commissioner reports. Anything there? Meetings to note? Yes.
I did go to Futures, which is an AMC, Association of Minnesota Counties Task Force, like I mentioned. We had a very long discussion on immigrants and lack of staffing coming up. And then that conversation moved into housing. Right down from the Capitol is the Doris Day Housing Facility. They are adding over 500, Dorothy Day, sorry.
Doris Day just died.
Doris, yeah, that's why that stuck in my head. Dorothy. They're adding 500 beds.
Yeah.
And then in doing that and taking the numbers and looking at how many homeless people did at one point have an address. And so they had a map of the entire state of where the homeless people in St. Paul are not St. Paul citizens. And the city of St. Paul and Ramsey County are taking a huge chunk of the bill paying for this, and they come from all over the state for resources. So that was an interesting bit of information. And then the conversation turned to vacation rentals and how vacation rentals are taking housing away from people, which I thought was interesting because we kind of feel like that's our issue since we're a tourism town and we have more vacation rentals than other counties. But they're feeling the pinch across the state everywhere, and other commissioners are looking at ordinances and structure and moratoriums and different types of things to address the issue. So it's a very detailed conversation, and we got into conversations on how far back we have utilized immigrants and the fact that back in the, in 1900, there's 1 million immigrants entering the U.S. annually. So it was interesting to get that information because you don't think back then that there were that many people coming into the U.S. But
How many now?
they didn't have the numbers for now, but just looking back. And then they were talking about assimilating. The immigrants need to learn to assimilate. And I was like, we still have the Lutefisk Fest, so that you know. Like, we assimilated as much as they assimilated, and talked about, the conversations. This meeting, just a reminder, when we have this meeting, it is a free reign discussion, and anything can be discussed, and what's discussed stays there. So I'm just giving the overview of the topic, but there are some very difficult and intense and hard conversations. And then someone brought up the media and how the media influences people's perceptions, and how media is different. And I was trying to look up our population in 1900 and how many immigrants we had, and I came across an article for the Cook County News Herald, and it said it was bought in 1893, and the owner used it to promote his Democratic policy. And then it was sold in 1907 to a Republican who wanted to promote his Republican policies. So media hasn't really changed all that much.
Oh,
It's-
no.
Yeah, so that was another part of our conversation, how immigration hasn't changed a lot. It's just different immigrants are coming now and how that works, and media hasn't changed a lot, it's just more accessible. So it was tough conversations. And then we also had a, guess you call it a trailer set up at the Association of Minnesota Counties, and it was set up to look like a child or teenager's bedroom, and you walked in so that as a parent, you would be able to identify whether or not your child had a drug addiction. And it had different things in there to look at, so that was very interesting to see that, what things to look for, what to look for in the closet and the trash bin and all of that. So that was very interesting. And we had our planning and zoning meeting, and as you've all heard, the ATV ordinance did not have the hearing. That'll be moved to June 12th. We did have the vacation rental continuation of discussion, and since it was brought up this morning, the public hearing was at the previous meeting. The public hearing was closed, and after it was closed, there was a discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, and the Planning and Zoning Board decided to table their discussion. And so that vacation rental item that was on the Planning and Zoning that many of you came was the continued discussion of the board, which is statutory procedure on how we did that. And so, as you know, that'll probably be coming to us at the end of the month to look at. And I think that's the biggest stuff that was covered.
That's a lot.
It is.
Anything else on meetings to note?
Well, I was just going back to reports. I don't have anything to report, but I just wanted to remind people that, audience, that probably the best way to get questions answered is before the meeting versus at public comment. Bringing comments, at least in our current format, is more of just a way to, I guess, to bring it to the greater public, which can also be important. But if you're really looking for an answer, I've had a number of people contact me directly, and I can contact staff directly and get things answered before the meeting. One thing I would ask, just in general, is because of open meeting laws, it's hard for any of us to respond to messages that are sent to all of us. And so, as a matter of policy, I will respond to any email or, I guess we haven't had any party line phone calls, but any email directly to me, but am very leery of group emails. And my email is david.mills@co.cook.mn.us, so, and that's on the website. We're all very, I'm assuming, accessible, so.
I mean, that was interesting because some of the public comment was about us using Hennepin County as a reference, and that isn't what we were doing. We just had a draft, that was the draft language that we had from another county. So if people had contacted us, we could have said that's not our language or what our intent is.
Yeah, we can just clear things up.
Yeah.
Before the meeting, yeah.
We do have a joint board meeting coming up at the North Shore Health on Tuesday, June 4th. There'll be a meeting to note. Meeting updates. I'll be in Duluth Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for meetings. I'll report on anything that's good from there. There possibly will be a quorum this weekend, especially after Mike Larson invited us to come, so I want to state that. Could be a quorum.
I am not available, but.
Okay. Any other meeting updates?
I will be reaching out to all of you. I will be on vacation in June and July, so I have some committees that I will need some support in covering. Thank you all for doing that.
Give us the high sign on that.
Yep.
And we have May anniversaries that are quite extensive, so take it away, Commissioner Dukirk.
We have Sarah Hadley in Public Health and Human Services, 5 years. Elena Hansel, Soil and Water, 8 years. Jason Hughes in our Sheriff Department, 4 years. Rusty Johnson in our Highway Department, 23 years. Leaf Lundy, again at the Sheriff's Office, 21 years. Jacqueline Meyer, Many of you probably never see her, but 7 years of keeping things together for us. Kyle Olberg, 14 years in MIS. Troy Olm, 4 years in maintenance. Allison Plummer, Public Health and Human Services, and for those that are newer, she used to be in our assessor's office, so she has a combined 13 years working for the county. William Sandstrom in the sheriff, 18 years. Todd Smith, 4 years as our assessor. Paul Spry, 17 years in the sheriff's department. Sean Swearingen, 14 years in the highway department. Greg Thompson, 33 years in our highway department. Darcy Ziller, 21 years in our sheriff's department, and James Zimmer, 1 year in public health and human services. And I was just thinking, looking at Paul Spry, I hope that Deputy Eddie gets added to our anniversary list, because we should acknowledge him too. He's a hard worker.
Wow. Congratulations and thank you, everyone. Anything else? Otherwise, I will.
Yeah, I'd like to add,
Yes.
I seen on Boreal that Trinity Lutheran's having their first annual blood drive.
Mhm.
Part of the blood drive, they're gonna be in Hoveland.
Awesome.
3 to 6 on the 16th.
Tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow's the 15th?
15?
Tomorrow's 15, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
Boreal said the 16th, or is it tomorrow?
I have a message from the pastor who is
Yep, there it is.
Yep.
May 15th, 3 to 6.
Oh.
tomorrow.
You can give money for your taxes and you can give blood too. What a deal. Thank you for that update. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Aye, aye, aye. Thank you all.
Thank you, April, for the, I thought I'd hate this screen, but you know, it's not too bad.
No, it's good.